Trusted, credible, nonpartisan. The Hill's unbiased news and analysis on policy and politics is delivered straight to the halls of Congress with unparalleled engagement in the Beltway and beyond. Amid a deeply partisan government where Republicans control all branches of government, veterans issues are one of the few bipartisan issues left in Washington. From enterprise reporting to breaking news to live events, The Hill stays on the pulse of what's next for our soldiers. Welcome to The Hill's Veterans Voices Summit.
Good morning, and welcome to the Hill's third annual Veterans Voices Summit. My name is Bill Salmon. I work for the Hill. I am not a veteran, but I'm the son of a veteran and the dad of a veteran. I'm not sure that quite counts, but my dad lied about his age to enlist in the Navy and fight in WW2, and he served on an aircraft carrier in the Pacific. One of my sons enlisted in the Marines. He was a combat Marine in both Iraq and Afghanistan. Closest I ever came to even seeing combat was I spent a couple of years as a war correspondent for the Stars and Stripes newspaper, covering our military overseas. And the thing that afforded me was the opportunity to become embedded with our brave servicemen and women as they were deployed across Bosnia and Iraq. And I really came away with an even deeper respect and admiration for those who wear the uniform. Because, you know, that's one of the great things about the U.S. military. It's still one of those institutions, increasingly rare institutions, that commands nearly universal respect and admiration. It doesn't matter what side of the aisle you're on. Americans broadly support our military community and their top priorities, whether that be employment, whether that be access to health care, whether that be suicide prevention, which sadly remains a very serious issue, because a lot of our military families are under a lot of stress, right? I mean, in addition to deployments, they've got many other things to worry about. Most recently now, this government shutdown. I guess, what is this, day 37 of the government shutdown, which is now officially the longest in our history. So that's yet another concern that they have to sort of think about. Is my next paycheck going to be there? Is the following paycheck going to be there? So we'll get into some of that today. We're going to get into a lot of these issues. We'll talk about some of the benefits, starting with the basics, like which veterans initiatives and benefits are the top priorities for the Trump administration. And then, we may get into some of these specific benefits and unpack them. There's one that I think we're going to talk about, the expanded VA benefits under the PACT Act. Of course, it has to do with burn pits and so forth. And the question is whether those benefits will be rolled back or whether they'll be allowed to remain. So we're going to find out in today's Veterans Voices Summit. Again, I thank everybody who's here in the room. I want to thank everybody who's watching online. We do encourage everybody to follow along the social media conversation on X, on Instagram, on Facebook, using &TheHillEvents and hashtag #TheHillVeterans. Let me repeat that. &TheHillEvents, hashtag #TheHillVeterans. With that, let's get this program started with a couple of very special people. One is my friend and colleague, Mike Vaquera, who happens to be the Washington bureau chief for News Nation. The other is Republican Congressman Jack Bergman, himself a Marine Corps veteran. He's from the great state of Michigan. He also happens to be the chair of the House Armed Services Subcommittee on Intelligence and Special Operations. So let's give a very warm welcome to Mike and Congressman Bergman. Thank you.
Thanks, Bill.
Congressman, if you
Morning, everybody.
Okay. Congressman, you were just telling me, I know you live and you're from the Upper Peninsula of Michigan, and I think everybody would like to be there this time of year to see the beauty, the natural beauty there, but a very special event coming up in 8 days.
opening of deer season.
There you go. I'm sure that's almost a national holiday, at least a UP holiday up
Well,
there.
it is. It truly is. The young boys and girls who are in high school in the UP, they're not required to go to school on opening day.
Is that right?
They won't get docked. My cousin, who was a career civics teacher up in Houghton, Michigan, used to say, November 15th is not a holiday. You are required to be in class. But if you're not here, and there was some really nice venison to show up on my desk a couple of days later, your grade will not be affected.
So that's the equivalent of a UP note from home.
Pretty much.
Well, that's great. Okay, you have served, as Bill mentioned, over 4 decades in the Marine Corps, rising to Lieutenant General, and now you did chair last cycle, the Subcommittee on Intelligence and Special Operations. This cycle, this Congress...
Readiness. I have the Subcommittee on Readiness, which allows me to touch everything, not just ISO, not just, MIL-PERS, tactical air and land, all of that. So it's readiness, and I've got a great ranking member, John Garamendi.
Sure, from California.
And the great thing about John is, number one, he's the only guy in the Armed Services Committee that's older than I am. Okay, that's number one. But he has a wealth of experience, and think about it, we graduated college in the late 60s, different parts of the country, and we literally put our first service pin, our personal service pin, in that spectrum of life on the left and right lateral limits. I went in the Marine Corps, John went in the Peace Corps.
Wow.
Every other service organization, I would suggest to you, could fit somewhere in the middle. But to serve, and I encourage all of you who have not yet served in some type of way to serve our country. It's not this country, it's our country. Put your service pin somewhere where you want to get involved that will motivate you to do a little bit extra. And by the way, you can have so much fun, and if you're a curious person, like I am, your eyes will be opened in ways that you never would have imagined. But take the step at whatever age you are.
Amazing. I've never really heard that perspective. Peace Corps, Marine Corps, and everything in between. So what is carried from your military background into your legislative role? What motivates you today when it comes to Veterans Affairs and National Security?
Well, let me just say on the front end, my dad was drafted at the age of 33 in 1942. Okay? Think about that. Because the country needed people to step up. He served in the South Pacific as a sailor.
How old was he, you said?
He was 32 at the time. Okay, right at the top edge, because they needed people.
Sure.
My mother was a Minnesota farm girl. Even though my dad was the sailor in the Navy in the South Pacific, my mother, the farm girl, had the vocabulary of a sailor. So if you think about some of the words I might use, credit my mother.
All right.
But my motivation still to this day, whether it's obviously my uniform service is over, hence I have facial hair. Okay. But to serve in whatever shape or form, no matter what committee, but especially on Veterans Affairs and Armed Services, I want to be part of that thread of service from first of all, on the recruiting end. Any soldiers in the crowd? What's the worst slogan ever in the Army? Bingo. The Army, be all you can be, was the best recruiting slogan ever. Then they went to be an army of one, and you go, wait a minute, we're teamwork here. By the way, number 3 grandson is a firstie at West Point, a future Army second lieutenant. But when you think about to serve in uniform, to transition to civilian life, to get yourself from the Department of Defense into the Veterans Administration, and complete then your next steps in life with the support that you've earned, as long as I'm in Congress. And by the way, in case anybody's wondering, there's no end game. My wife has said, you look like you're actually getting something done, and you're enjoying working with people. And I don't care if you're a Democrat or Republican. I really don't. You got to vote, and we take some hard votes, and we need to make sure that we do the right thing for all the veterans and their families. But the only way to do that is to make sure the effort on the front end, the honesty in recruiting, through the training, through the readiness, through the deployment, through the fight, through the transition back to civilian life, and the transition into the Veterans Administration is complete is not, smooth is not a good enough word, but with the advancement in technologies we have today available to all of our veterans and their families to engage online, shall we say?
I want to, you talked about votes and you talked about transitioning, and I know that you had an op-ed in The Hill, our newspaper, our publication, talking about a vote that on your measure that happened back in committee a few months ago, the Choice Act, passed by one vote from the committee. It's somewhat controversial with veterans groups. As a matter of fact, in the op-ed, you particularly mentioned the VFW, the Veterans of Foreign Wars, and their opposition to the bill. Could you give us a little background on exactly what's happening with the bill and your response to some of the criticism from the veteran service organizations?
Sure. By the way, I'm a life member of the VFW. Since when I got back from Vietnam, my dad signed me up, and his Christmas present to me every year for about 12 years was to pay my VFW dues. And then in 1984, he said, I'm sick of paying your dues. I'm just going to buy you a life membership. And what he didn't tell me was he wouldn't make it to the next Christmas. Okay? So my passion for the VFW, I'm also a Legion member, and I pay more dues to local, veteran service organizations. The point is, we are a country of individual freedoms. Those freedoms have been fought for. And for the government to limit a veteran's freedom to choose who they want to do their claims, to do their paperwork, I believe is counter to the American ideal. The veteran needs to be able to have the choice to choose. What the government is supposed to do, especially the Veterans Administration, is make sure those who do those appeal work and claims work for the veterans are good, honest actors. So the Choice Act preserves the freedom for that veteran to make their choices to who they want. And if they want to pay money for it and are okay with that, great, but it also creates the environment and the specifics to hold bad actors accountable and the VA to accredit people. And if you're not accredited and you're not doing the right thing for the right reason, you can't do it. But that's the Veterans Administration role, is to provide that top cover for the veteran to make sure they're not getting hit by a bad actor. So that's what the Choice Act is all about. I'm not going to support anything anywhere that limits an individual's freedom in our country. I don't care whether it's a veteran or not. So to me, it's not a thing where you've got the VSO against, if Jack's Mighty Fine Claim business was doing a good, honest business. Tell you what, I've got some spectacular companies that have come into our office and sat down, and I've grilled them, still will. What's your plan? What do you serve? How do you serve the veteran? But remember, the Veterans Administration is supposed to serve the veteran, not serve itself.
I'm going to keep moving here. We just have a little bit of time, but another one of the issues that you're out front on is the use of psychedelics to treat PTSD in veterans. I'm sorry, you probably get asked this all the time, but how does a 3-star Marine general
who's never taken a drug in his life
come to support...
Unless beer, just so you know.
How does a 3-star Marine general former come to support the use of psychedelic drugs for veterans?
Yeah. It's a great. Thank you for the serious question. Sometimes we sit in these forums and we don't get very serious questions. I looked at getting involved in alternative therapy research for probably 2 years before saying yes. But number one, we still have a way too high suicide rate among our veterans. Number two, when I did my research, we have not had breakthrough therapies in medicine, especially in mental health, since the 50s. We've become a pill society. And I'm not going to mention the Sackler family, but you all know the history, okay? When we had to treat for pain as physicians, we lost is part of the edge of doing the right thing for our people who were under severe mental stress. So once I looked at the battlefield and our veterans and their families, it's not just the veteran, it's the spouse, it's the children who are suffering from those stresses as well. So that's what convinced me to look at, is there a better way to do this? And that's why we are doing everything we can to provide the monies to encourage the Veterans Administration to do research along with other entities, to working with the FDA and those to do the breakthrough therapies of the next generation, of the next millennium for mental health. Because guess what? If it works for veterans, it's going to work for other people too.
One of the biggest issues for many veterans is the knowledge and skills they acquire in the military and translate that to meaningful civilian roles, especially those with intelligence and special operations backgrounds. So what do you think is needed, what needs to happen to help with that specific subset and veterans as a whole?
Well, here's again, it's a great question, because what does life after uniformed life look like for veterans? Do you realize that roughly only 10% of the veterans served 20 years or more? So you're looking at a population of 90% of the veterans who come, they might serve one enlistment 4 years, they might serve 8, 12, 14. I've got the numbers breakdown. But as we look at the age of a veteran and how they're going to transition from the military to civilian life, the average number, here's a data point, now this is probably 7 or 8 years old, but if you serve 20 years active duty and you retire and you start a new career, which you're going to because your spouse is going to want you out of the house, okay? That's just the way it is. You will go through an average of 5 career changes before you stop working. So let's say you retire, you enlist at 18, retire at 38. You've got at least 2 full 20-year careers, you know, or at least 1.5 still in front of you. But 5 is the number of job changes that a 20-year active duty veteran will go through after retiring, because they got used to, in 20 years, you know, in your 20s, your 30s, you got used to a certain way, and in the civilian world, there's no plan of the day that tells you what to wear to work. In most cases. Some cases, yes, but not in every case.
Okay, I'm going to wrap up with a broad question for you. What do you hear most often is the top concern, as a member of the Veterans Affairs Committee, from your veteran constituents?
The delay in being able to everything from get an appointment, the delay from being able to get an appeal to a claim, the delay. That is the number one. Now, you know who the biggest opponents were to telehealth were before COVID? The veterans themselves.
Really?
They wanted to go see their doctor face to face. Now, we had to go through, everybody had to change during COVID. It's all over, and now the veterans go, man, I don't have to get out of my chair. I can sit here in my jammies and with my cup of coffee, and I can see my doc right here on telehealth. So we need to make sure that we continue to advance the use of the technologies available to provide the health care and the administrative services that the veterans today will be comfortable with and good at. If you're 70 years old, your ability to work online is a whole lot different than if you're 25. That's just the way it is.
All right. Well, Congressman, thank you very much for coming around today. I know the House is out. Thank you for being in town. No, we don't want to talk about that.
No. This is, hey, my constituents sent me to the battlefield. They didn't vote for me to have me stay in the UP and hunt deer, although they like to see me on deer hunting. This is the battlefield for any member of Congress. This is where you should be to do your legislative work, and I would suggest to you the one change that we could make and should make, we should have more of our members move their families here like they used to.
Oh my gosh.
So you know one another. Your kids play soccer. You're not a Democrat or Republican on Saturday morning at 11 o'clock. You're a mom or dad standing at a soccer field watching your kids play. And oh, by the way, you just happen to start talking about business because it's, you know, the game's a little slow. That's what we need to return to here. Good people getting elected, coming here, working together, dealing with our differences, but in this case, focusing on the veterans, not the bureaucracies.
Wow. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Congressman. Thank you very much.
Appreciate it.
Please welcome our panelists to the stage. Kathy Roth-Douquet, co-founder and CEO of Blue Star Families, retired Army Colonel William Butler, president of the National Veterans Memorial and Museum in Columbus, Ohio, Babs Chase, SVP of Strategic Initiatives at the Elizabeth Dole Foundation and Executive Director of Face the Fight Coalition, and Abe Kamarck, Navy veteran and founder and CEO of True Foods.
Appreciate it. I want to start out, just to get things started, with sort of a broad-based question and ask each of you to answer. And we'll start with Abe here on the right. So from your perspective, what is the most underappreciated challenge veterans face in transitioning to civilian life?
I think the cost of living that you encounter, like when you're living in the military, when you're working in the military, you're basically in a socialist system that's taking care of you, taking care of most of your needs, daycare, subsidized housing, subsidized healthcare especially. And when you get out into the world, and the biggest problems in America today are the affordability crisis, like the housing crisis, the affordability of healthcare, things like that. So really, and the fact that your healthcare is tied to your job, so it really kind of takes away. And like the general said before, the majority of veterans getting out don't do 20 years, so they don't get health care afterwards. I think that's a big misnomer. Most people don't understand that if you don't do 20 years, you don't get veteran health care most of the time, or if you're not an injured veteran, if you're not 100% disabled. So, that's been a major problem. Like, I never would have started my own business if my wife, who's also a veteran, wasn't working in a government job and didn't have a secure, stable health care thing for our family, because starting your own business is incredibly risky, but it's incredibly risky, especially if you're risking the health of your child because you can't afford healthcare. That's a major problem. So I think, the problems of America affect the problems of our veterans, and this is, and it affects the problems of small business and entrepreneurs and startups too.
Babs, underappreciated challenges for veterans.
I think the sense of isolation after you transition out is something that people know you're going to walk away from that community that's been built in for all those years of service. But I think once you hang up that uniform, it's not there in the same way. You're back in the civilian sector. You may not have that community around you day to day. It's not just about the isolation. It's about maybe not everybody understands your service. They don't necessarily understand what that means and what you've gone through. And so that's through that sense of isolation, you're missing that connectedness that is so crucial during transition.
That's so interesting. I'm going to come back to that.
Yes.
Bill, underappreciated challenges for veterans transitioning.
So, Mike, just to amplify what Bab said, it's the sense of purpose, I think, which contributes to that sense of isolation. We really need a Rosetta Stone, so to speak, because veterans are talking in Greek, and corporations and private companies, and America is talking in Aramaic or whatever language you want to refer to. And veterans have got to translate their service. Corporations and private companies have got to be able to be curious and ask questions. Okay, what is an artilleryman? What is an infantryman? What is an armor crewman? What does that really mean? And veterans also have got to be willing to take a step back, to be given an opportunity to then take 3 steps forward once they get into a company or a line of business and show their worth, because it's there.
Kathy?
First, thanks for your son's service. And I know you must be very proud of him. You are a Blue Star family, too. From my experience with my own husband's transition and from the hundreds of thousands of families in Blue Star families, amplifying what Bill and Babs said, I think it's the cultural change. In the military, you're in an honor-based society. And the U.S. society is a rights-based society. In the military, you don't advocate for your own rights. You do what you think is right, and people respect you for that. And in the larger society, that doesn't make any sense. And it's very hard to do that translation. It's going from Mars to Tokyo, and we don't treat it that way. And so people can feel like they're crazy, like they're not respected and they're not understood and they don't know how to engage. We need to do a much better job helping both the military families and the larger society understand that challenge.
It's such an interesting and an eclectic panel with so many different perspectives here on these crucial issues. And I want to come back to some of the solutions that I know each of you are concerned with when it comes to the challenges that you're talking about. But in particular, I know, Kathy, you, when we spoke backstage, you talked about what's happening right now, today, this hour, in the veterans community. You take what you called a pulse poll of veterans. Is it a daily thing?
It's weekly, and it's since the shutdown started. We did this during COVID as well, to look at the currently serving military, their spouses, veterans and their spouses, what are they experiencing right now? This shutdown is really disastrous for our current military. And it's not just because of the financial worry, which is very high. 3/4 of our military right now is feeling financial stress. Food bank usage is surging. Even though military pay hasn't stopped, the 20% of military have their spouses in federal service, like you do, Abe. So they're down, these middle class, working class people are down one paycheck. But more importantly, we are so vulnerable in the military to our civilian leadership. And when our civilian leadership doesn't seem like they can do their basic job, it undermines our confidence in serving. And that's what we're really seeing. People are saying, I don't necessarily want to recommend military service. Over the last 3 weeks, the feeling that I'm going to continue in service has dropped 10%.
I want to skip over to Abe because I know you have a particular perspective on this as well, being the owner of a small business. First of all, tell me about, just as briefly as you can, about your business and how all of this is impacting you.
So True Made Foods is my business. We make no sugar, ketchup, and barbecue.
Oh, you came with props.
Yeah.
Did we tell him no props?
We make no sugar, ketchup, and barbecue sauce. Go to truemadefoods.com. You can find stores where we're carried. All natural, better for you products. We're just trying to turn junk food into superfoods. So, but yeah, sorry, what was the question?
Well, how the current political situation, the shutdown, and the economic environment is affecting your business.
It's anything that brings uncertainty and chaos into the business world is bad. Like we want steady hand on the tiller. You want something that's predictable. You want to know what's happening next quarter. You want to know what's happening next year. You want to know where interest rates are going. All of these things are very important. And since the spring, supply chains have been a disaster. We're luckily, 99% made in the U.S. All of our ingredients, all of our packaging comes from the U.S. But our supply chain is so complicated, as we found out post-COVID, with huge problems in the supply chain. Mm-hmm. Even a small amount, like corrugated cardboard. We make a lot of corrugated cardboard here in the U.S., but guess what? We don't make all of it. And so as soon as there's a tariff on corrugated cardboard or something like that, there's a shortage. And then supply goes up, the current manufacturers can't meet that demand, and we're packing in different boxes, and we have to change the way our pallets are configured and things like this, and there's all kinds of knock-on effects, and production gets delayed, and we don't have product on shelf. All of these things have happened to us just this year, just in the past 6 months, and it's been, just when you think you're doing well and you're coming out of inflation, then prices go up again. And so we've had to raise prices twice this year already. Again, 99% made in the US, and we've had to raise prices because of tariffs, because our co-backers tell us that they're getting hit with tariffs over things like steel and aluminum and things like this, so they have to raise our prices, and so we have to raise our prices.
Okay. The economic environment affects veterans in particularly impactful ways. Babs, what is your main concern when it comes to the larger environment that veterans are trying to make their way in now?
So I think when you're looking at the current environment, one of the things, and as you know, I lead our work with Face the Fight, which is a national...
Tell us about that, yeah.
It's a national movement to address the crisis around veteran suicide. If you don't mind, I'd love to do a quick poll of the room. How many of you in this room have been impacted by veteran suicide? Can you show of hands?
Wow.
I don't know about you, but excuse me as I hit the mic, but that, it's hard to see. And that's why we're doing the work that we do. And as you and I had a chance to talk earlier, since 2001, we've lost over 125,000 veterans to suicide. And when you think about that from a visual, you already saw the impact in this one room. That would fill Commander Stadium more than twice. And when we think about that number, that's just not about the veterans we've lost. Think about the impact on those families, those friends, and the broader community. Think about that talent lost back in our communities. And so whenever we're going through times of struggle, that's just going to exacerbate somebody that may be having a tough time. Mm-hmm. So what's so important for us as a community is, remember, going back to the connectedness. How do we look out for one another? We all have a role to play.
The other staggering statistic on veteran suicide is from September 11th, 2001 to today, we've lost 4 times as many veterans in active duty military to suicide than we did in combat in Iraq and Afghanistan and Syria. 4 times as many.
I'm stunned by the display of hands that we've already seen here today. You operate the National Veterans Memorial Museum. Mm-hmm. You said you want to be known as more than a museum.
We do. So the mission of the museum, we just celebrated our 7-year anniversary last week. The mission of the museum is to honor all veterans, elevate their stories, and amplify the power of service for everyone, everywhere. So much like Representative Bergman, we want people to come into the museum, see, hear, and listen to stories, men and women who served our country, what they did in the military, but just as importantly, what they did when they took the uniform off, how they still contribute to their communities, their state, their country in so many ways. We want people to be inspired to serve, become agents of change in their school, their synagogue, their church, what have you, to get involved. And, you join the military and it's not about you. All vestiges of individualism are torn off of you and you're quickly built up as a member of a team. You live and die as a team, you succeed and fail as a team. And we need to take that same idea and ideal out to America and get folks involved in service to their community. Because if you are serving your community, I firmly believe you're serving your country.
I do want to turn to, and again, a startling statistics and a demonstration we've seen here about how veteran suicide is affecting and touching so many different lives. I want to turn to some ideas for solutions, ways to address what is clearly a crisis. Kathy, what are your thoughts?
Blue Star Families has this wonderful program called Support Circles. It's working with the VA, and it's an upstream solution, helping family members and loved ones of someone who served learn how to respond to what they see is a problem. What's the chance that a veteran will raise their hand and say, I think I have a mental health problem? And what's the chance that their loved one, their spouse, their mother or father, their child will say, I'm worried about my dad or my mom, my husband or my wife. So this is to empower those people around them to learn how to be a support and a conduit to health. We have had the people who participated in this over the last 3 years say that 100% it has saved the lives of their loved one. So getting upstream and creating community, reducing isolation, starting with the family and the community around them. Blue Star Families, we have chapters around the country to help the community as a whole wrap themselves around the family so the family can wrap themselves around the service member or veteran. I think that's where health comes.
Yeah. Abe, just tell me about your experience transitioning from active duty to civilian life and ultimately to a small businessman and the challenges that you faced.
I had a unique challenge in that I transitioned in 2008, which was probably the worst time anybody's ever chosen to transition. Remember there was a financial crisis and a bit of a recession.
The TARP, who could forget? Yeah.
But it was interesting because I was doing my executive MBA. I was stationed in England for my last shore duty, and I did my executive MBA at London Business School while I was there and tried to use that as a way to get out. But you run into a lot of biases as you're transitioning, and during a financial crisis, you're going to run into a lot more because as jobs get tight, veterans are the first ones to get cut off. And what I found is that people like to pay a lot of lip service to veterans, things like this, but they don't really want to actually help or do anything because it usually means sacrificing something else. I've found the same thing transitioning to small business. When you're running a small business and as a startup, when we were raising money and you're talking to VCs and things like this, again, everybody gives a lot of lip service to veterans, but for them to give me money meant that they were admitting that my military experience was just as valuable as their Ivy League education or their time at Goldman Sachs, which they don't want to do. And I think that's a major problem, and there's something that we need to overcome in this society.
And Babs, I know that you've seen these pitfalls and you see how they reverberate down through the veterans community and affect people. What are their interventions available? What have your organization found to be effective in sort of heading off some of these problems?
So let me go back just a step further with Face the Fight. We were founded in 2023 by USAA, Reach Resilience, and the Humana Foundation. Because what happened is, when USAA would regularly talk to their members, they knew this was the number one concern. But what they saw is we've got wonderful nonprofits represented here today that have been addressing this crisis for decades, alongside the Department of Veterans Affairs, the Department of War, and others that have been trying to make a difference, but it wasn't happening. So it was time for the private sector to step up And our focus is on really 3 key areas. We are building a coalition. We have over 250 organizations that have joined since launch. 2 of them represented here today. Thank y'all very much for being a part of this movement. But we are also investing in proven solutions to save lives. We've invested $41.5 million back in nonprofit organizations that are the boots on the ground that are proving, as I mentioned, to save lives. And last but not least, we're building a public awareness campaign. We want to erase the stigma around asking for help, that connectedness, but letting people know asking for help is a sign of strength, not a weakness.
The stigma, everybody's familiar with that stigma. I think seeking help, going to a therapist, I think all of us have had the experience, our friends, neighbors, our families, maybe even ourselves. Everybody knows somebody in therapy now. I'm shocked that stigma still exists. Is it particularly acute in the veterans community for some reason?
Absolutely. Think about what's expected of those that serve. And I see the heads nodding in this community because you're expected to be bigger than life. You are strong. That is not okay according to the community. That's what we're trying to change.
And to lose your security clearance. So
you could, it's even,
right.
I see.
But if that's what you've experienced in service, now that's not gonna change that quickly and that easily once you've hung up the uniform.
Bill, how does the museum, the National Veterans Memorial Museum, contribute to veteran transition into public life, into the general population?
Yeah, so it's through partnerships like Babs and Kathy have described, and Abe described with his experience, and it's creating these networks and connections. We run with Ohio State University, the John Glenn College of Public Affairs, graduate level leader certification course for veterans on military to civilian transition. So we've been doing that for 6 years. This will be the 7th cohort that we start in January, and it's a 6-month course. So that's one of the ways that we do it. And others are just sharing that veteran experience. We've got a great partnership with StoryCorps, several state veteran halls of fame, and Honor Flight as well to.
Oh, you're involved in Honor Flight, yeah.
Yeah, actually our CEO's here today on an Honor Flight out of Columbus.
Oh, cool.
But through those partnerships and the ability to share the veteran stories with the America, so to speak, it opens it up. It opens it up to where family members are now hearing stories they hadn't heard before from their loved ones. And they get a greater appreciation, a greater empathy, and greater understanding for the experience that people may have just clammed up and not shared. So those are many of the ways that we do it with our programming and events at the museum, and then community engagement and outreach outside of the museum. But just to touch again on the PTSD and the stigma piece. So from 2008 to 2011, I was a battalion commander over in Vicenza, Italy, did a year-long deployment to Afghanistan. As right when I took command, that unit had come back from a 15-month deployment. It was a really exceptionally tough deployment. There were 42 who killed in action that deployment.
What year was that, 2008?
2008.
Yeah, so that was right after Fallujah?
No, in Afghanistan. Yeah, well, not. Big firefight there. 3 medals of honor have been awarded to that unit from 1 battalion. If a unit had PTSD, it was that unit.
Yeah.
And guys were just getting in fights with each other. They're getting in fights with their sister battalion. They're getting in fights downtown in Vicenza. It was a really challenging environment to get them focused on our upcoming deployment to Afghanistan for 12 months. And it wasn't until I had heard one of my squad leaders, exceptionally courageous. He'd been awarded the Distinguished Service Cross, Silver Star, Bronze Star for valor from that one deployment. Just a warrior in every sense of the word, and everybody in the unit tremendously respected him. And I had heard through one of the platoon sergeants that he was going to therapy. And I thought, okay, if Eric Phillips is going to therapy, and I've had him at the museum talking about his story. If Eric Phillips is willing to go to therapy, then there's hope. So I pulled him into my office one day. I said, Sergeant Phillips, I understand you're going to therapy. Is it okay? Would you be willing to share that with the battalion? The other 900 guys who were having a tough time coming back from the deployment. And he thought about it for a split second and said, sure, sir, I'll do it. So we had battalion formation, brought Eric out, and he talked about how he was struggling coming to grips with the PTSD that he had experienced on the previous deployment, and he didn't want to lose his girlfriend, now wife. And so he shared his story. And it was a night and day difference between the way the battalion acted.
It's a new kind of leadership, or a different kind of leadership, anyway, to be able to have a different kind of bravery, I guess.
Right. So get a guy like or a gal like Eric up there to reduce that and remove that stigma. And people are like, all right, if Eric can do it, I can do it.
Wow, that's an amazing story. Okay, I want to throw one more question out to the group here. We talk about veteran care and support, and there's a whole alphabet soup and sort of a maze of organizations, government, non-government, private sector, nonprofit, out there to help veterans. But it can be kind of complex. What do you see as an effective model of collaboration to get everybody on the same page across all of these services?
Yeah, I think we are the most cooperative group in America, the military and veteran service organizations. Babs and I are both involved in an organization called White Oak Collaborative, 140 different groups that share information, and we have a resource center. If anyone's involved with veterans, you can find it online either through bluestarfam.org or the White Oak Collaborative, so that everyone's resources are shared and you can find the right way to go. There's 42,000 organizations that serve veterans, but all but about 190 of them.
42,000?
But only 190 have a budget of over $1 million a year. That means the vast majority are really not effectively doing work with evaluation and with accountability. Find those 190 and stick with them. Now, there might be some local group that's super and takes vets fishing or does other things like that. By all means, if you know them personally, but there's a lot of folks who are well-meaning or not well-meaning and are scamming. Stick with the ones who are reputable. We are the ones who transfer back and forth with each other what services are available. No one is born a veteran, and no one's born alone. You start active duty, Guard and Reserve, and you have a family. So the security comes there. We have to be connecting to people. They don't live on installations anymore. They're in your communities. Blue Star Families helps you find them in your community, get to know them while they're serving, strengthen the family. The number one reason people could commit suicide is a relationship problem. We have to strengthen relationships, strengthen communities. That's where the health comes from. By all means, at the crisis, intervene, but let's start far upstream.
Babs?
Can you repeat the question? I'm going to make
sure.
Sure. Correctly.
We were talking about the complexity of all the different organizations and the best way to orchestrate effective action, to have people work in concert with each other.
So I'm just going to go, thank you for the softball on that again. So what we built with the...
I'm a journalist. That's not necessarily a compliment.
Right. That's what really, I know, I'm sorry about that. But when I talked about Face the Fight is the beauty of the coalition and how we're coming together to save lives. And I think what's been really remarkable is we've looked across Face the Fight. We have a number of those upstream organizations that you mentioned, Kathy, and those are wonderful. But oftentimes I don't know how to make it back.
No, that's okay.
They'll get it back on for me. Yeah. I'll speak a little louder if that's helpful. But one of the things we've noticed is you've got some upstream organizations that may be asking somebody, how are you doing? But when somebody comes back with an interest and says, I'm not okay, they don't all have a trained social worker on staff. They may not be able to support, but we've got organizations that do. So by bringing those organizations together, we're going to have better impact and better outcomes. So to me, it's all how we work together. As Kathy said, we're a unique ecosystem that does believe in looking out for those on your right and on your left. We never leave a fallen comrade. That same ethos is what's going to ensure that our organizations are going to work together as well for the best outcomes for those that have worn the cloth of our country.
Abe, let me ask you, as someone who's not necessarily involved directly in the organizations represented here and in the room and elsewhere, as a veteran, do you find it, where to reach out when you want help? Do veterans know where to go? Do they know who to ask? Do they know, are people proactively reaching out to veterans? I know it's a lot to ask of one individual veteran, but
It's hard to say. I think it's yes and no. There are so many organizations out there. Not all of them are doing great work. Some of them are really small. They're just trying to do something, and it not always effective. I think there can be a lot of noise, and I think that's one of the problems, is that there is so much noise, there is so much lip service, there's a lot of talk about it, and it's really hard to find that real signal of where veterans can get real help and for specifically what they need. I think that's a problem.
Bill, any thoughts?
I would just, veterans, they can't be afraid to ask for help. Their family members, their buddies with whom they served can't be afraid to say, hey man, are you okay?
Yeah.
And if something doesn't look right, feel right, smell right, we've got that intuition for a reason, act on it and intervene and ask them if they're doing okay, and then get them connected with one of the, hundreds or tens of thousands of organizations or the VA that are out there to help veterans.
Well, this has been a really great conversation. I've learned a lot just in the 25 minutes we've been sitting up here about the issues facing veterans and some of the solutions and the great work that you guys are doing. So thank you.
Thank you, Mike. Thanks so much.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Mike.
Please welcome Congresswoman Chrissy Houlahan, Democrat from Pennsylvania, Air Force veteran, member of the House Armed Services Committee, and co-founder and co-chair of the Servicewomen and Women Veterans Congressional Caucus.
Well, thank you very much for being here with us today. We've had a great panel so far.
Yes, clearly.
Yeah, learning a lot.
You served in the U.S. Air Force, active duty, and in the reserves. How did your service shape your perspective on veteran care and the transition and what's happening in the transition landscape, if you will, today?
Sure, and kind of backing all the way up, I was born at Pax River Naval Air Station.
Oh, right here in Maryland.
Yeah, and I come from a military family, of course, and my dad and my grandfather served together in the same squadron, and my dad met my mom through the squadron.
Wow, where was that?
In Pax River.
Oh.
And so I was born into this. And so it's not just my own personal service, but the service that I had as a kid, growing up in a military family where my dad and my grandfather sometimes were stationed in the same place, or we were trailing them because they were P3 pilots. And so my experience here in Congress now is really informed by the decades of experience I have as a military kid, but also the experience I have as an active duty member myself and a veteran myself. And my experience is also clearly informed by the fact that I'm a woman, and that's sometimes different.
How so?
Well, it's 20% of the service are women at this point in time, and we anticipate that it can be as high as 30% in the next decade. But we still are very much, obviously, in the minority, and our experience as active duty people and transitioning into our veteran status is, by definition, going to be a little bit different. And so when I'm in Congress, either on the Military Personnel Committee or on other committees, I'm trying to always have the lens of both the family member and also the active duty service member and the veterans transition. And you ask some questions about, do you feel like veterans know who to ask or know who to contact? I think one of the biggest things we do wrong is there's not a very seamless transition between being active duty, separating, and being a veteran. We don't do a very good job of kind of doing a really soft and warm handoff there. We don't do a really good job, particularly in places, for women as an example. We don't do a very good job for people who are going to be not necessarily in proximity to a VA. And so those are the kinds of holes and gaps that we need to be addressing.
It just astonishes me that, in the history of the country, and as long as we've had to get this right, that those gaps still exist. So what can Congress do about it?
Well, and this is one of the things that's frustrated me. I'm a newbie, relatively speaking, to Congress. I've been in Congress now for 7 years. I never ran for anything. I was not engaged in politics in this way before running for office, and so I've learned a lot. What I've learned is that just by nature of the organization of Congress itself being the Veterans Affairs Committee and the Armed Services Committee, and never the twain shall meet, there's kind of turf wars and competitions that go on between those two, and they can't seem to find a way to get along with each other. And that creates systems that don't talk to each other, at least from a congressional perspective. And similarly, and I'm going to go ahead and say it, one of the things that makes me frustrated that I've learned is sometimes we put together programs that are designed to help active duty members or veterans, but we design them so that they don't cost too much money, or they don't cost money at all. And the way that we do that is to not tell people they exist, or to not make it automatic that you are, when you transition as a...
So why go through the exercise?
That's my point. It's enormously frustrating. We do this pretty consistently, where we're going to create a program to make sure that people who've been exposed to toxins, and may have carcinogenic tendencies or tendencies towards different kinds of cancers, we make it impossible for them to prove that they're worthy or deserving of that care. Right now, as an example, I traveled to Mongolia recently on the Intelligence Committee, and Mongolia has a lot going on there, but one thing they have is an enormous pollution problem.
Really?
So, yes, like the valleys there of their major cities basically are a bowl, and it's very, very cold there, and everything just settles down.
Mm-hmm.
And so everybody we send there, whether in the intelligence community or the military community, is going to be exposed to that, environment. They're going to be breathing that environment. And so why wouldn't we ask those people to be tested before they leave, tested after they come back, to see what the actual cause, whether there is an actual cause to their exposure to in this case, pollution or other elements. And we just don't do that because it costs money. And I think that's a problem, because we absolutely value our men and women in uniform, but we have to put the money behind it, and it has to be holistic and not sort of opportunistic. We tout a lot of programs that we don't actually tell anybody about.
I can't. It's amazing to even hear you say that. And so aside from the health impacts, and I mean, I covered the burn pit legislation and the debate around that over the course of the last several years, and the outcomes there, and legislative outcomes there anyway. But in terms of simply the handoff that you're talking about, the transition, where are the problems there, and what should be done about it?
We're making some progress on this. I don't want to be a complete Eeyore about this, but it's taking...
Is that a Winnie the Pooh reference there?
Yes. I'm a big children's literature fan.
Well, I had 3 kids that were raised on Tigger and
Exactly.
And Eeyore.
Well, I'm the Eeyore to maybe your Tigger.
Not usually.
That's good to know. That's good to know. But yeah, I think that as an example, I'm an engineer, and what I did in the military and then in my subsequent life was a lot of systems implementations and a lot of problems that we have in the transition between active duty and veterans is systemic, literally, whether we're transferring medical records from one area to the other or making it kind of easy for somebody to be able to access veteran care. We don't make that easy, and I think we're getting better at it. I think we're creating systems that speak with each other more and more, but that's taken way longer than it ought to. The civilian economy already has this kind of stuff figured out. My brother is a Army vet, and he lives in Iowa, not close to a veterans hospital. And when he and I were speaking about his needs, we went on the website to try to access, how he could find care, and it was impenetrable, and he and I are not dumb. Between us, we have several degrees and graduate degrees, and we can't figure out how to make sure that where his care comes from and where he should be going. That is not okay.
Yeah. My brother is a nurse, he's a civilian, but
My brother too.
Yeah, he worked at Schofield Barracks in Honolulu, near Honolulu and on Oahu, with traumatic brain injury and PTSD patients, and he described a lot of the frustrations that you're describing or you're outlining. When it comes to access to care as well, that were expressed by many of those patients too.
Well, think about it. You're talking about people with brain injuries, you're talking about people who have suicidal ideations, and you're asking them to do impossible tasks online to prove that they need help when time is of the essence, and they don't have the time or the capacity in some cases to be able to be self-advocates.
No. Are there enough veterans in Congress?
No. I think right now there's about 20% of us who are veterans, and I think the peak was something like 70% was the peak. I do think it's important to have those. I think you had General Bergman here earlier in the morning.
Yes, we did.
He and I work together a lot, and we don't see eye to eye ideologically on many things, but we find a lot of common ground to work on that has to do with personnel issues, as an example, specifically. I do think that the disposition of a vet is better than the average bear in Congress, like in terms of being more willing to try to give people the benefit of the doubt and to know that you're mission driven and that we're all here because we're all patriots. And so I do think that helps. I will say that in the history of Congress, there has been fewer than a dozen women veterans in Congress, and I do think that that makes a huge difference too. One of the reasons why I decided personally to stay on the Armed Services Committee and I was on Foreign Affairs, and I'm also on Intelligence, is that I think that it's important to stick and stay in these conversations. Yeah. If you know a little bit about Congress, people are constantly scrambling for better committees.
A committees.
Yeah, and I think this is an A committee. You know, I think that this is a committee that's deserving of really important thoughts and talents, and not sort of like a way station to somewhere else.
Yeah.
So I believe we need more veterans.
I know that you're working with a veteran across the aisle, another female veteran, Jen Kiggins from down Tidewater Way in Virginia. Your district is in southeastern Pennsylvania.
Yeah, I'm just outside of Philadelphia.
Yeah. On helping or legislation that would help veterans transition more readily into civilian life. Can you tell us a little bit about that, please?
Yes, well, we work a lot together on a lot of things. Actually, her area has a lot of need for steel, and in my area, if you may know, Pennsylvania has a lot of steel.
Yeah.
So we work on those kinds of things.
They named a football team after the steel industry.
Something there.
Yeah.
I don't know anything about that particular team. Yeah,
right. Well, I would guess not from your side of the state.
Not from my side of the state, but the thing I think you're referring to is a piece of legislation that helps veterans as they transition from active duty into the energy sector.
Veterans Energy Transition Act.
Into the energy sector.
Yeah.
Again, this is one of those things we could do better. The jobs of the future, the economy of the future and of today increasingly is in that sector. And we have a lot of good programs that help people identify jobs that are in maybe older or less up and coming sectors. And so Jen and I are working together to try to make sure that people have access to the training and transition to be able to move into that sector. I will say that a lot of veterans, they struggle with just even basically trying to articulate what their skills are and how they transfer over to a civilian economy. We speak in a different language in the military, and we write performance reviews and our resume in different ways than the civilian economy does. And that's a hard transition too.
Yeah, and you'll make sure that bill is funded when it passes, right?
Well, that's the pay for is the drama.
That's always the thing. Yeah.
You put the language in that no new money will be used to pay on this. I'm working on also bipartisanly with Representative Stephanie Bice on paid leave. Stephanie Bice is from Oklahoma. And we are struggling to try to find the pay for. We're one of 7 nations now in the world that don't have a paid leave program. And interestingly enough, we were collectively going after military golf courses as our pay for. And that didn't go over very well.
I would imagine.
Well, but really, I mean, do we really need to be doing that when we could instead be spending that money on giving paid leave to the nation?
You tell me.
Yeah,
I don't know.
I don't know.
I remember.
Apparently, it's a sacred cow.
Yeah. What comes to mind, I covered the White House in the first Obama term, and President Obama went to Andrews quite frequently to use that golf course, I think for security reasons, but maybe he had a reason. I don't know. I'm almost afraid to even touch that third rail, military golf courses.
I touched it.
Okay, I want to get your closing thoughts. I want you to tell our audience, and incidentally, this streams on the Hills channel on Roku, on Samsung, on various other platforms. We call it Fast TV. It's our new biggest thing here at News Nation and Nexstar. This is incidentally our 3rd annual Veterans Conference, and I did Jen Kiggins sat in the seat 2 years ago where you're sitting now, and I did interview her as well. But what are your closing thoughts? What is the most important issue that needs to be addressed when it comes to generally easing the transition from military life when someone takes off the uniform into civilian life, and B, some of the issues that were discussed in terms of the mental health challenges that veterans face?
Well, I think that you've nailed some of it. I think that health care writ large is an important, large issue that needs to be addressed better. I do very much worry transparently about what we're doing to undermine our VAs right now. We've let 30,000 people go in the last year. My community has a VA in Coatesville, And interestingly enough, in the PACT Act, there was a very small piece inside of it that said that if you were I'm making sure I get
That was
this
the
right.
burn pit legislation.
Yes,
yeah.
but inside that was a really cool opportunity to do public-private partnerships, so to speak, actually with nonprofit hospitals with VAs. And Penn Medicine, which you can probably imagine is a pretty world-renowned medical facility in Philadelphia and across Pennsylvania, wanted to partner with the VA because of this language in the burn pit bill, in the PACT Act bill. Effectively, the language allows nonprofit educational institutions such as Penn to be able to partner lease property to the VA from the hospital to be able to expand coverage and care. This is a rural area. My hospital, my VA is in a rural area. This is an opportunity to have a world-renowned hospital come to my area and help the VA, and that's been quashed because of all of the upheaval in the administration, because we've literally got no one who's willing to call us back any longer. And we can't keep shooting ourselves in the foot on this kind of stuff. We have to take care of our veterans, and we cannot be partisan about this. And it's obnoxious at this point. As a member of Congress, I now have to get permission from the VA to visit a VA at the highest level. That's not okay. And so I think we need to focus on the care and health of our veterans. Mental health is clearly one of those things. Health care that's unique to women is also something that's on attack right now too. And so that's one thing, but also, of course, making sure that we feed our veterans. Many of them are on food stamps right now. Those issues are big too, and that they have opportunities for employment. Maslow's needs, basically. Veterans need the same thing that regular folks
that's
need.
something I meant to talk about with the last panel, and we didn't get to it, is the fact that there are a significant number of veterans who use food stamps to one degree or another. It's actually alarming, and also, frankly, active duty as well. I think it's something like, it estimates between 13 and 25% of our active duty members. And Representative Don Bacon and I worked really, really hard on a quality of life panel and amendments, 31 of them, to help quality of life of active duty members. Those kinds of things, could be transferred over to the veteran population. And you've actually given me a good idea. Maybe what I'll do is try to take what we did in the quality of life panel and transfer it over to the veterans. All right. Well, don't tell anybody the journalist gave you an idea, but...
Well, I appreciate it, actually.
All right.
Take this home with me.
Sign me up as a co-sponsor.
Thank you.
Thanks very much, Congresswoman.
Please welcome Christopher Molaro, Army veteran and founder and CEO of NeuroFlow, a digital health platform that helps healthcare providers integrate behavioral health into overall patient care.
Well, hi, welcome.
Thanks for having me.
It's great to see you. This
Great to be here.
Conversation's been really interesting so far. I'm learning a lot, but you are going to bring us a very unique perspective and I would say new to maybe understated ways of addressing some of the, in particular, mental health challenges that veterans are facing now. Just give us the quick thumbnail, the elevator pitch on what exactly you're doing with NeuroFlow.
Sure. We're bringing technology, data analytics to support the care providers in the mix. So we're not providing the care. We partner with the therapists, the primary care providers, and really we're solving two problems. One, tons of people go unidentified of needing mental health support, just underdiagnosed and not understanding the risks associated with that. So we're using data across a bunch of different spectrums to identify mental health issues and input that into the clinical workflows. Once those issues are identified and care is being delivered, we use workflow tools and data to make sure quality care is being delivered and that the veteran or a patient is improving over time. And if not, we could hold those providers, those networks accountable for providing quality care.
So tell me how you're doing this, though. You're bringing technology to bear in a way that's never been brought before, right? To identify those who may be in crisis or at least need some mental health care.
That's right. So there's these things called evidence-based assessments that are a few decades old, but they would always be given on paper and pen. anybody that's visited a doctor recently, remember they ask a question about how many drinks you have, or have you been sleeping, or have you had feelings of hurting yourself.
And I'm sure everybody answers those very truthfully.
But, exactly. Yeah. But so we look at a bunch of different data sources, including digitizing those so they are done at home. And when people do it at home, they answer more honestly than handing it back to a nurse.
Is that right? I guess that stands to reason, yeah.
We've done over 7 million assessments on veterans in the last 15 to 18 months and input that back in the electronic health record. What we've done, though, is identified suicide risk so that providers can be preemptive of getting ahead of those veterans' issues.
And how do you do that?
Well, sometimes it's just asking the question directly. The 9th question on the PHQ-9 assessment asks the question, and you'd be surprised with how many people endorse on that. But then we're using, AI is being used in very interesting ways. A lot of people think AI just means chatbots. AI does not mean chatbots. Chatbots is one utilization of AI. We're using AI to look at a bunch of disparate data sources, health claims data, EHR data, even wearable data to track activity level. All those different data pieces put together have clues for if somebody is at risk of depression, anxiety, and the severity of that risk sometimes.
So you go to mental health providers, therapists, doctors, physicians, and you offer them this technology, basically. Is that?
Yeah, that's right.
That's right.
Yeah, we partner with them. They do that. We, just started with the VA a few years ago, but commercially we provide this.
And give me the statistics again, and what is the increase in diagnoses and people that have been reached out to that would not have ordinarily been reached out to?
Well, we published a study with Prudential Insurance for people that are on disability. They identified 20% more people that, and they have millions of people, so 20% of people that previously didn't have a mental health diagnosis, needed mental health support, got them back to work faster. The VA actually has been doing measurement-based care. So if you think about, if you go to an oncologist, they're not going to ask you, how do you feel with your cancer? They're going to actually measure blood levels, tumor sizes, and so forth. That objectivity doesn't exist in mental health today, and we're starting to trend that way with technology.
I see. You served in the Army?
Yes, sir.
You led a platoon in Iraq. Can you tell me how that experience impacted your desire, your motivation to get into this business? And can you share a moment during your service that influences your work today?
Absolutely. I mean, my story starts, I was 22 years old. I was a brand new butter bar second lieutenant, and I was given a platoon, 38 soldiers, and we deployed to Iraq. And, God bless them, because they helped me succeed and kept me straight in terms of successful 287 combat missions in 12 months. Thank God we brought everyone home alive. And then back at our home base, there's several soldiers that struggled, including myself, with sleep issues, right, with increased anxiety. One soldier was brave enough to raise his hand and say, I'm drinking too much, I'm depressed. So he was referred to a therapist that was on base. Obviously, cost was free. And 3 months goes by, and we got a call that he completed suicide. And aside from losing him and the loss of life, the tragedy of the situation was we did a whole investigation afterwards. What happened? Was there negligence? He never once went to the therapy appointment that he was referred to. He never once went to the pharmacy to get the medication he was prescribed, and nobody, his leadership, his care, ever followed up to track how is he doing, is he improving? And all of those things were data points for if he's not getting the medication, he's not going to the therapy, obviously you're not going to get better. And that candidly was a leadership failure and a system failure that didn't need to exist. And so that's where technology, I don't think, is going to replace providers. But if you think about using technology appropriately, could have bridged those gaps to make sure he didn't fall through those gaps. I didn't have this aha moment back then. It was something I just struggled with. And it was years later, I transitioned out of active service into the reserves and went to Wharton Business School and was in a class called the Business of Healthcare and was learning about, wait, this isn't just a military veteran issue. Like, everybody struggles with mental health. It impacts Medicaid, Medicare, your sisters, your brothers, rural, urban, and nobody really was addressing it. And I thought, this is where technology can help be an extension of care rather than replace that care.
So it's not a magic wand. This is a way to identify and reach out to people who may not ordinarily reach out themselves. Or the example you gave was, we were earlier talking about the stigma of mental health and going to therapy, especially acute among people in the military.
Right.
And ensuring that if someone is to see a therapist, that they're actually going to see
That's right.
the therapist.
That's right.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not about adding more people. For the longest time, last decade, we've been talking about access and adding, we need more therapists or more psychiatrists. I think that's part of it, but you're just never going to have enough therapists and psychiatrists to meet the demand. The supply-demand inequity is too great. So the question is, how do we utilize the existing resources we have more efficiently and effectively? And that's where accountability, data, and using those resources precisely, I think, will help in a big way.
Is there a debate between sort of scalable tech versus providing more human resources and therapists? I mean, are there trade-offs? Can technology meaningfully reduce suicide risk, or is it mostly a support tool?
Well, we at NeuroFlow, we say high tech, high touch. So we don't want to replace the humans, but we want the humans involved to be able to operate at the top of their licensure. You know, depression is not a binary scale. It's not you have it or don't have it. And so if you just have mild seasonal depression, you don't need to go see a psychiatrist necessarily, but the higher risk person that needs to go to that. But if you send everybody to a psychiatrist, you create a bottleneck. That's where you get these 30 to 60 day wait times. And I think on the surface, you say, well, let's just add more psychiatrists to meet that demand. But what we say is, let's use that existing psychiatrist more efficiently, getting the people to the front of the line that need the psychiatrist and giving a different level of support to the other people.
So it's a question of working smarter, not harder in a way.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well said.
Yeah. I'm giving people ideas left and right here. Congress people, CEOs. So the achievements that you're talking about, they sort of underscore the potency of effectively implementing evidence-based practices, right?
That's right.
Could you talk a little bit more about, you know, how do people find you? How do veterans find you, people in need of help?
So we are the business model is a B2B business model or business-to-business business model. So we're not direct to consumer.
I see, right.
So someone's not just looking for NeuroFlow's tools and downloading them and accessing them by themselves. We are a software tool utilized by the healthcare professionals.
And how do they find you?
So work with them. We've been working with the VA for almost 8 years now, where they needed technology support to implement the evidence-based practices and needed to do that at scale and be integrated into their electronic health records, and we won that RFP. We work with health systems and payers around the country. About almost 20 million people are analyzed on our platform every day. A small subset of those are VA.
What keeps you optimistic about the future of veterans' health in the United States?
We're talking about it. I mean, this conversation just is like, you can't fix it unless you measure it and unless you are starting to have the dialogue. And there's a tremendous amount of, I think, resources going behind it. People are acknowledging it more. Post-World War II and Vietnam, PTSD wasn't talked about. It wasn't a thing. Now, at least we're putting the resources behind it, and I think that's the first step in addressing it.
And what advice would you give to others, veterans, who want to found a company, want to get started, especially in the tech end of things, to get into veterans healthcare?
Well, I don't have a business background other than
you went to Wharton,
but before that, I didn't have a business background, and I certainly don't have a healthcare background other than being a patient perspective. But I think surrounding yourself with great people and looking at what the underlying problem is, and then focusing on that problem is what got us started. And the VA was not our first customer. The VA would be like, "Are you kidding me? We're not going to work with this company that's not secure." All this stuff. So I
would imagine that the challenges with regard to being hired as an outside contractor at a place like the VA are enormous for a startup.
Oh, it was enormous, but it wasn't insurmountable. And I think if you're focused on the mission and you get to the right people and you can learn and so forth, we got in there, and now we're integrated into the EHR. I mean, we have such phenomenal engineers and data scientists on our team. The VA calls us for advice in terms of how to integrate into their own EHR. And it's just truly, as a veteran, I'm also a patient at the VA, so it's kind of cool. I get the text messages from our tech. Our tech is all white labeled, so like if you didn't know it was our tech, it just looks like the VA. But I know it's our tech, so I'm like, oh, well, this button
that must be
look right.
uniquely gratifying.
I'm like a secret shopper. Yeah, I get to go in and give feedback in terms of how it's working. Yeah.
All right, well, great. I appreciate you coming around today. Do you have any closing thoughts that you'd like to share about this issue on the eve of, as we approach Veterans Day?
Yeah, well, first of all, it's a great honor to be here, so thank you for the opportunity. I'd say, number one, if you're a veteran or if you know a veteran or if anybody in your life is struggling with mental health, there are a ton of resources out there. And it doesn't matter, again, it's a spectrum. So there's nothing to be ashamed about. There are, from everything from suicide prevention to your seasonal depression when the days are shorter, like ask for help. There are resources out there. And in terms of innovating, like let's push the boundaries. The VA is doing some phenomenal work. And if we could continue to partner with them in those public-private arenas, I think we could change healthcare and we like to say, it's not just mental health over here and physical health over here. Like one affects the other. If you think about the patient that has diabetes and they also have untreated depression, that untreated depression, they're eating less healthy, you're less active, you're not taking your medication, it's making your diabetes worse. And then your diabetes gets worse, so you are more depressed. And you get into this negative cycle. And so if we could just change the conversation to being health, not mental versus physical health, I think we could change the world.
Okay. On that note, thank you very much. Good luck to you.
Thank you so much.
All right.
The National Guard has been in the news lately. Here to talk about that is Virginia Berger, Marine Corps veteran and Senior Defense Policy Analyst at Project on Government Oversight, or POGO.
How long were you in the Marines?
I was in the Marine Corps for 9 years.
And tell me about your experience. Where were you?
I was a communication strategy and public affairs officer, right? So the Marine Corps changed our name. We have to be fancy. In 2017, we decided we needed to be different than every other service even more. And so we said, everyone else says PAOs.
Really?
But
I thought the Marines were different to begin with.
They are, always. But we're going to say ComStrat instead of PAOs. And so I was a communication strategy officer, which meant I did all of the media interactions. I made sure that the generals didn't say the wrong thing in front of a camera, things like that. But I also was an instructor at the basic school down the road in Quantico for 3 years, where I taught new lieutenants provisional infantry tactics and ran around in the woods with firing blanks a lot.
Okay. Yeah. All right, so I'm going to ask a variation of the same question I've been asking everybody who's been up here before. How does your experience inform your approach to Veterans Affairs now?
So now, I am myself a veteran, right?
That's what I mean.
Yeah, sat here and listened to Chris talk about NeuroFlow. I'm going to start looking at my texts from the VA a little more carefully now and see which ones are maybe from him, right? But I have to look at my role now as a defense policy analyst. So, exciting day for me to leave my desk and come and speak with you all. I'm usually knee deep in, a lot of very boring documents, parsing through it. But as I'm looking through all of those, my own experience shapes my lens, right? I make sure that as I'm reading these things, what did my experience as a Marine give me that allows me to understand them? What is my now lived experience as a veteran giving me to consider when I'm looking through the NDAA, when I'm looking through defense appropriations? How is that shaping my own policy analysis? It's a huge factor, right? And it's undoubtedly influencing me in my work.
It's kind of amazing that you would end up in this line of work, frankly. Very interesting, very uniquely Washington, I would say.
Yeah.
What is the biggest issue you're working on now?
So right now, I think like a lot of people, my focus and a big focus of POGO is domestic deployment of the military, right? So we're seeing, starting the summer with LA when the Marines and National Guard were there, and then here in DC, the National Guard, right? I'm sure we've all seen the 19-year-olds in their flak jackets on the metro stands as we've gone to and from work,
yes.
Right? And then Portland, Chicago, right? This is a concerning trend, and it's one that, myself and POGO have issue with, and we believe that it points to an increased politicization of the military and overreach from the executive branch and mishandling our service members and what they're actually trained to do, right? They're not law enforcement. And so working through how we can address that as far as levers for oversight, what we can advise Congress to do to be able to take a larger role in making sure there's not an abuse of power there, that's really my focus right now.
Every day for decades, I've taken the Metro Red Line, got off at Union Station. When the National Guard was deployed over the summer, I'd started to see them there. And I often wondered, because I would see them at Union Station, and obviously everybody's seen them down on the National Mall. What is going through their minds in terms of the perception of Washington that people outside Washington might have, or someone who, takes the Metro every day and Union Station's not exactly the Garden of Eden, but I never really felt particularly threatened there. So what are you hearing from individual Guards, men and women, about the deployment and the perception of DC and whether or not even their deployment is worthwhile?
I think you can look to the Army's own internal work on perception, right? There was a piece in the Washington Post, I believe, a few months ago that showed some internal documents from Army Public Affairs that national trust in the military is being eroded as they see people deployed to their streets in uniform, right? And so I think we can take it from their own work, like, oh, this is impacting Americans' trust in the military, and specifically in individual service members, which is going to have a flywheel effect on veterans, right? Like, we're all associated with that institution given our service. So I think we can look to that and see, oh, there is a risk here, right? What does that mean? And as far as individual Guardsmen, there's been some, anonymous sources saying that it has a major impact on morale, right? We've been speaking about mental health for service members and veterans, right? Morale is a big part of that. If they don't believe in their mission, if they see that their mission is having a negative impact on Americans' perception of the larger institution, that's undoubtedly going to have influence on how they feel about themselves and their role in the larger system, right? And so those are all things that we can look at and be worried about.
Let me play devil's advocate for a moment, if I could.
Sure.
The deployment of the Guard, regardless of what they're actually doing versus what ICE is doing or what Border Patrol is doing or what other law enforcement agencies have been deployed or deputized to do. I think probably it's safe to say that national perception of the Guard deployments here in DC and elsewhere has been that they have, because the president has certainly encouraged this perception, cleaned those cities up. As an individual Guardsman or woman, wouldn't I be proud of that?
I think you could be proud of it, but you could also say, the nature of the Guard is they are reserve forces, right? I can only speak from my experience. I would be a little bit miffed to be pulled away from my family and my day job that I probably make more money at to mow the grass on the National Mall, right? Especially because the National Park Service is supposed to be doing that anyway. But I think, from a perception of why shouldn't they be proud of that, it goes into the larger picture of, what is the role of the National Guard and what is the role of local law enforcement, right? There's cleaning up cities and, we have institutions and agencies for that. And I think the larger discussion is where are the gaps in those places that we can potentially fill with the same money that's being spent to deploy the Guard, right? Like, there is an immense amount of money being spent in LA when they went there, here in DC, on these other deployments into Chicago and Portland. What is that dollar sign, and could we, magic wand, make appropriations a lot easier? Could we funnel that into local law enforcement so that they can actually do the job that is assigned to them, right? And empower those agencies, many of which are populated by people who are also Guardsmen. I was reading a report earlier about how the irony in Portland is many of the National Guards members that have been activated there are members of the Portland Police Department, and so now there's a gap there, and it's like, well, we could have just kept them in their job in Portland and probably had the same end.
How do you think a veteran transition, just slightly shifting focus here, is impacted when a Guard member experiences frequent domestic activations compared to overseas activations, for example? Are there unique challenges?
I mean, I'm not a member of the National Guard, so I am speaking purely on conjecture here. But I did have junior Marines who worked for me who, after exiting active duty service as a Marine, still had a drive to serve, right? They wanted to go back home, have a family, back in their home state, but they still felt a pull to service, and many of them joined the National Guard. I signed a lot of paperwork, recommending them for a Guard position. And, I think that's a great transition of service, right? It allows them to continue serving in a way that they know and are comfortable with. And I think, that's my touch point with the Guard, my most direct one outside of the work I do now. And I think on those junior Marines that I led and what they're probably facing now, and I would think, all right, well, do they understand the mission? It goes back to what did they understand their purpose in that city to be? And if they stand there on that metro platform and they just see people kind of scowling at them on their way to work and they, are picking up trash and they're like, well, this isn't what I was trained to do. I'm, not really sure what my purpose is here. There's policemen, there's other local law enforcement agencies. And I think it goes back to the idea of like, what is their mission? What is their purpose? And if it is a political one and it is a political mission and a politicized reason that they're there in justification or a poor justification, again, it goes back to that perspective of, are they going to be able to find real meaning and purpose in that service?
Now changing to another subject.
Yeah.
You've written extensively about this issue, the right to repair.
Yes.
It's a maintenance and repair restrictions on defense equipment that can harm readiness and cost taxpayers. First of all, define it. Secondly, and tell us why it's a problem.
So right to repair is a issue where if you have, let's use the example of a generator, right? We need a generator to power all of the electronics and equipment used by a military unit. Let's say that unit is out on an island in the Pacific and their generator breaks. We would hope that there is a maintainer present in that unit who could fix the generator on site and get the whole COC back up and working. Oftentimes, written in the contract with the defense industry companies that they have purchased that generator from, the military is not able to repair that generator themselves. Even if they have the knowledge and tools, they actually have to bring it back stateside or fly out a contractor to fix it. And again, the generator is just my example, but this is an issue with all hosts of equipment, right? Everything you can imagine, from airplanes, the F-35 floating on a amphibious warship, to something as simple as some of the small arms that our Marines and soldiers use in a deployed environment every day. And that is incredibly concerning from a national security perspective, right? If we are in active combat, right? Let's think that there's a conflict. Let's imagine that something has escalated and we have broken equipment that is needed to accomplish the mission. If we have to fly that equipment back home or fly out a contractor to fix it, that's delaying and impeding that unit commander's ability to do their job. That's it's shoehorning our own ability to fight the good fight.
And so why are these restrictions in place?
So, I mean, frankly, it's a tool of the defense industry to increase their own revenue, right? It's all about bottom line. And if there are defense industry professionals in the room, I apologize, we're probably not on the same side. But it's about increasing their bottom line and padding that contract so that even after the equipment has been sold and turned over to the military, they still have a touch point and are able to reach back and say, oh, well, you've got to fly out our contractor, you have to keep paying us, that's proprietary information, we're not going to be able to help you or give that to you so you can do it yourself. And there's a lot of nuances, and I'm not going to get into the very nitty-gritty details of it, but it is something that we have seen bipartisan support for in Congress. And in a time with so much division, I think when we can find an issue that is truly speaking to both sides of the aisle, it's worthwhile to pursue it so that we can, help our service members be able to actually, do their job themselves.
Veterans Day is almost upon us.
Yes.
That's the occasion of this third annual symposium here that we have at the Hill. You have a very unique perspective, I would say. Everybody up here today has had a unique perspective. But, what was it, 8 years in the Marines?
9.
9 years in the Marines. Now you're a policy analyst, and you dig deeply into some of these issues that face what Dwight Eisenhower called the defense industrial complex.
Yes.
What are the major, principal, most urgent challenges facing the veterans community from your perspective?
Facing the veterans community, I think it's the politicization of the military. That is what I look at the most right now when I think about veterans in my own perspective, right? As we share our service and, fall back on that as credibility for ourselves, if the military loses credibility, that hurts veterans, right? And it hurts our own ability. If the reputation of the organization we are associated with is discolored, it's going to have a negative impact on us. And so, looking at the executive branch and the current administration's increasing politicization of the Department of Defense, it is concerning to me, right? As we see a lack of press access, we see them limiting the ability of DoD personnel to communicate with Congress, right? We see these domestic deployments of troops with murky and poorly justified reasons, right? These all are eroding public confidence in the military as an apolitical body. And that's going to have flywheel effects and impacts on our veterans.
Well, at that point, Virginia, thank you very much for your perspective. Certainly unique. Thanks.
Yeah.
Great to see you. All right.
Thank you.
Thank you to the great Mike Vaquera for moderating the first half of our program this morning. Natasha Zuves, a News Nation anchor and investigative reporter, will take us through the remaining sessions. Please turn your attention to the screens for a look at a scoop Natasha uncovered earlier this year regarding Area 51.
They keep us classified to protect themselves.
A group of Air Force veterans and a DoD contractor say they have been sickened, even disfigured, after being stationed in the desert in the mid-'80s to early '90s.
Did you have any idea what you were being exposed to?
None. None of us knew.
These veterans say they served at the Nevada Test and Training Range, which encompasses the infamous Area 51, a remote spot that hosted nuclear testing both underground and atmospheric. Since the 1950s, their work so secret there would be no record that the men ever served in the windswept desert.
It was the technology behind it. That's what we were there to make sure nobody got.
They still can't talk about most of their work on the range, but the one mission they can now disclose, guarding the F-117 Nighthawk, America's first stealth bomber.
We ended the Cold War, truly.
Oh, wow. The story begins with a reunion barbecue back in 2016 at veteran Dave Creet's Las Vegas home. Air Force buddies who hadn't seen each other in decades make a startling discovery.
So I asked the guys, we're just sitting around drinking beers. I said, you guys, I got this lump on my back. And I don't know, has anybody else got that?
I said, yeah, I had one of those. I had it removed. It was the size of a grapefruit.
6 out of the 8 vets had benign tumors called lipomas. The 7th said, I don't have any, but my son was born with one.
It just kind of confirmed it. There's an issue. Where we were, that's the one common denominator is we were all there.
A DoD contractor who worked at the base at the same time as these vets sickened.
Yeah, they took his teeth out first because they had to scrape out a lot of cancer.
They had to scrape out a lot of cancer.
2 cancers, 80% of his tongue removed along with his vocal cords, all of his teeth. He lives on a feeding tube. The veterans tell News Nation their medical claims are being denied by Veterans Affairs. The work's so top secret, their records are what's called data masked, as if they were never there.
It's like a kick in the gut. It's just a matter of betrayal.
After learning of the serious health conditions his Air Force brothers were suffering from, Dave did some research on the Nevada test site. Hundreds of nuclear weapons tests were conducted in the area from the 50s until the early 90s. In the 1970s, the government began exploring the idea of building a military installation there to house classified projects. A 1975 Department of Defense environmental report of the area acknowledges nuclear contamination, depleted uranium, beryllium, and plutonium present before the men were sent by the government to the range. But the report says, quote, discontinuing the work done would be against the national interest.
It's one thing to be ignorant, or to be naive, to not know, but they've understood for a long time.
Dave's discoveries led him to create the Invisible Enemy, an advocacy group where he says he's connected with more than 1,000 veterans who served at the Nevada test site. Hundreds of them report being sick.
We were in the dirt all the time. I can recall the times where when we'd perspire, that our uniforms would turn kind of a yellowish orange.
Our government knew that area was contaminated. So knowing that, and they willfully put us there, that's giving somebody a death sentence.
We did something important. We did good work. We changed things. We don't deserve being ignored by saying we don't exist.
Now please welcome Natasha Zuves to the stage. She will be speaking with Dave Creet, one of the Area 51 veterans featured in her investigative reporting. He is also chair of the Invisible Enemy Foundation.
Thank you.
What an honor for me to be with all of you today. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. And can we have a round of applause for Dave Creet? Far more important than me. And it's so great to have you here, Dave. Welcome.
Well, thank you. And just so everybody knows, the reason we've had so much success in spreading our message and being able to communicate what's happened is because of Natasha.
Thank you, Dave.
She is my favorite news anchor.
I will take it. I will take it a million times. Dave, thank you so much. What does it feel like to watch the piece back? I know that things have changed so enormously for you since this aired in February. One of the clips of you, I think, has more than 9 million views. What does it feel like to know that your message is out there in a big way?
It's incredible. I mean, I speak, this is really an emotional thing for me because it's so personal. But at the same time, it's like I'm nobody from somewhere. And I tell people that all the time. And look at this. I mean, I'm a real estate broker at a little firm in Vegas that my wife and I own. And here I am in DC walking the halls of Congress and being able to speak to you. It's such a huge honor. It's indescribable.
Yeah. What is the emotion there for you, Dave? I see.
Oh no, my kid's doing over/under on 7 seconds before Dad gets emotional about things. It's always the under. But this story it's a horrific story when you really understand it, and it's really personal because it's not only what it's done to me, done to the guys, men and women that I served with, many of whom have already passed, but what it's done to our kids, because the radiation that we experienced genetically changed us. Our chromosomes are now permanently different. So that goes to our kids. And so all of my kids, they all have lifelong issues. That's a tough one. Imagine taking that home. And, my youngest got a diagnosis this week. She's been trying to find stuff forever. I can't even tell you the words in it yet. Got to have my wife's help on that one. But it is a lifelong problem for her. And it's a very personal issue. So, yeah, it's tough.
I know your son was born with a brain tumor as well.
Mm-hmm.
Cafe au lait spots all over his body when he was first born. You've said that those are the most innocent victims of all of this.
Yeah, they are. And my kids aren't unique or special. It's all of our kids. I shouldn't say all. I mean, that's an exaggeration, but it is a significant number of the kids, of those of us that served up there, that are going to have problems forever. And they didn't do anything except be born.
I know, Dave, you are the one who gets the phone call. You are the one that the family members call and tell you that their loved one has passed away, a fellow veteran who served on the range with you. I believe the memorial list, when this aired back in February, was at 446. Do you know what that number is today?
Yeah, we're well over 500. I think we're getting up around 520.
Wow.
So, and that list is 2 years old. And you can imagine we weren't some big base. These are little places out in the desert. And it was all DOD contractors and military. And yeah, it's a pretty significant number. One of the units believes that they've lost about 2/3. I'm 60. We shouldn't be doing that.
Yeah, the average age on the memorial list, I believe, is 65 years old. You have said we all know what our cause of death will be. Tell me more about that. What does that mean to you?
So, one of the guys that you saw, he's the one on the feeding tube. I think he's at round 6 or 7 with cancer. Another one of the guys who says we were in the dirt all the time, he retired out of the Air Force as a chief. He's on his 4th bout of cancer. I have a whole long list of stupid stuff. Half the time I forget some of it. But I have left brain atrophy. Left side of my brain is shrinking. I have a brain cyst. I have vestibular issues. I have 67% lung function. I've got about 20 tumors around my body still. I have tremors, like Parkinson's type tremors. It is what it is, you know. The one thing you'll find, and Natasha knows, all of us are super proud of what we did. I mean, we did the super secret squirrel stuff and got to play with the cool kids' toys and, you know, and did all kinds of stuff. I mean, I went up when I was 18 years old and I saw a flight line full of Russian MiGs and I was told I was at a U.S. Air Base. You know, literally, there was like 20 Russian MiGs outside the window because we'd fly to work. And then a little bit later, after we got all of our credentials and stuff, A pilot sat us down in the cockpit of an F-117, and there was only a few. And he's like, this is what we do. This is what you're here for. 18-year-olds don't do that stuff.
Young men and women handpicked, sent for top secret missions, couldn't tell your spouse where you were going, couldn't tell them what you were doing. Still, you can only tell me one of the missions that you were involved in. I asked. You are keeping that promise. Everyone's okay. Do we need help over there? We're good? All right, we're good to go.
Quite literally.
Okay. Dave, I'm curious, what is the feeling for you? There is such pride in the service and pride in the work. To now be told that you are data masked, when you all speak to the VA, when they try to check your records for treatment, et cetera, you get that message back, data masked, data masked. You say that this just happened again to you this week. There's a denial that you ever served out there in the range. What is the feeling there?
Yeah, well, so our issue is, I left the range 38 years ago, and our records are still data masked. So we were never there. So the fight that we fight is that the DOD says there isn't there, therefore you weren't there, therefore you weren't exposed, not our problem. So I had reapplied for my brain cyst and brain atrophy, and I was denied this week. They said, well, you can't prove exposure to radiation. You could walk to a detonation location from my dormitory uprange, from the front gate of the work area uprange. You literally could walk there. Even the Air Force, all right? And Marines can walk across a planet. But us Air Force guys, a few miles might be the limit, and you can get there. It's sad.
Yeah. And tell me about this distinction. It's fascinating because DOE workers who served at the exact same site, the exact same range, who worked at the exact same range, but for far shorter periods of time. They were not stationed up there day and night, for days and days on end. They went to work there during the day. They're covered. They have presumptive exposure to the radiation and the toxins that are up there. Why is it that veterans are not also covered? Tell me about that distinction.
So there's a bill that's called EOIPA, EEOICPA, one of the great acronyms from our government, right? If you worked for the Department of Energy as a contractor, which is who ran our chow halls and built our hangars and did all that, if you were uprange 250 days and you got sick, you're eligible for up to $400,000 in a payment in lifetime medical. You get what's called a white card. And they provide all kinds of treatment and help and stuff for the Department of Energy. But officially, the Department of Defense was never there. Well, I can officially tell you they're wrong. And so we flat out get denied. We have 4 years. If you look at our records, we were on vacation in Vegas. And that's how long I spent uprange. And that was the minimum requirement. You had to go up for 4 years.
Mm-hmm. Tell me about this discovery for you. You and these fellow vets, these buddies, sitting around a reunion barbecue at your house. And this is just meant to be an opportunity to catch up, to swap stories. And then there's this discovery. One of them says, hey, I have this tumor.
Yeah, so we had the advent of Facebook, we all start finding one another, and we get together for a reunion. It's at my house. Day one of the reunion is everybody's flying in. Those that get there come to the house. And so there was 8 of us sitting in my backyard. And literally, I haven't seen these guys since the 80s. So you would think there's all kinds of things to talk about. But one of the guys, Randy, you saw him on that clip, he asked everybody if anybody had tumors. And so I spoke up and I said I did. And then we went around and 6 out of 8 had tumors. And then one guy says, I didn't have any, but my son was born with a tumor. And then I responded back, my son was born with something called neurofibromatosis. So if you ever saw the movie Mask that Cher did, there was a kid that was real disfigured. Well, there's 2 types of NF, 1 and 2, neurofibromatosis. My son, thankfully, has the one that's not so disfiguring, but that's what he has. It's genetic. The docs call him a spontaneous mutation. That's tough. Then they wonder why. Earlier we're talking about mental problems. it's this kind of stuff. This is why. So, and you're probably going to get to it, but I'm going to tell you the thing that piss you off in all of this is when I found a document dated 4 years before they built my base, and that document says that the benefit to national security outweighs the future environmental liabilities. Therefore, the range will continue to exist. That was 4 years before I went up. They took that test just a couple of miles from the front gate of my work area. They said nobody should be here. Crazy. I mean, truly, it's like it's not believable, except for the fact it's a U.S. government document. It was their report. And I sent it to a couple people, and I just said, read this. Am I reading this right? This can't be.
6 out of the 8 men sitting around that barbecue said, I've had a tumor. You say the 7th one said, I don't have one, but my son was born with one. That was the beginning of this discovery. You took this and you ran with it, not just for yourself, but for all of the people that you served with on that range, for all of the families who keep calling you, reporting that there's another name to add to the memorial list. Right after we speak here today, where are you going, Dave?
To the White House.
Tell me more about that.
Talk about nobody from somewhere. I got to walk across the street, and I don't even know who I'm talking to. I don't care. I'm going in the building to tell the story, and by God, somebody's going to listen. So, and that's also because sitting here. So I got to make her choke up. I choke up all the time.
I spent the entire time crying when I was at Dave's house around that kitchen table with him and all of the other vets. I've told Dave this. It's been, shoot. Yeah, you did it.
See, there you go.
You did it. It's been the honor of my career so far. Just getting to spotlight some of this and help this fight as it goes forward. Dave, there have been several pieces of legislation since this story aired. What is giving you the most hope so far? What is the path forward?
So our path forward, this is some of the incredible things. I mean, I started this 2.5 years ago, and we all know how Congress works. So I talked to Congressman Amodei, the congressman from Nevada, and I said, I need a piece of legislation. I never talked to him before. Within 45 minutes, he put in the request. That's pretty incredible. And then Senator Rosen from Nevada started tracking what was going on in the House, and we now have a bill in the Senate. So it's H.R. 1400 in the House, it's S. 2220 in the Senate, and then we have amendments on the NDAA, and that's been my work. I've been here 2 of the last 3 weeks.
And you believe that the amendments on the NDAA is the most hopeful path, the most expedient path so far, is that correct?
Yeah, it's what the NDAA is going to do. It's going to really be our first step, and that is for the Air Force to come out and say, or the DoD to come out and say, you were exposed. And now all of a sudden, a whole bunch of our issues, like brain atrophy, becomes presumptive, and we can service connect them, and that's huge. And our hang up right now is we've got to get Speaker Johnson to give us a waiver because we got scored, okay? CBO scoring. It's Latin for this is going to cost somebody money. And our cost, I looked up last year's defense budget, it was like $833 billion. Something just unimaginable. Ours is $115 million over 10 years. That's what it takes for us to be acknowledged. And they say there's no money for that. And then I call BS. $833 billion, it sits somewhere. And that denies us our benefits. Literally. And if you don't mind, the thing about the benefits that's so important, we can't unwind what happened to me. Right? I mean, whatever it is, it is. But when I pass, there's not going to be any DIC benefits for my family, for my wife. She's just cut off. And we know this stuff's service connected. We all suffer from similar stuff. But the government gets to write us off, and they're doing that over $115 million. You've got to be kidding me. So that's why we push.
And I know you feel there's a ticking clock on all of this. As we mentioned, since February, 50 plus veterans who you know of added to that memorial list. I will never forget sitting around that dining room table with you in Vegas, and the sentiment that I heard from you and your fellow vets over and over again was you felt the government was waiting you out. I kept hearing that from every single person I spoke with. Do you still feel that way?
100%. If it's $115 million over 10 years, give me a break. I mean, we have, sadly, there was a great example of what not to follow, and that's what happened to the Vietnam vets with Agent Orange. You know, Congress and the government wanted to pat themselves on the back when they passed the bill 50 years later. Hoorah. I'm not giving them that. You know, I'm not running for office. I'm not doing any of that. But I'm going to beat all of them because we're not waiting that long. We don't have that long. You said 65. It's down to 62 and a half years old. I'm 60. Let that sink in. So we'll get there.
You're 60, the average age, 62 and a half. How do you think about that? How do you conceptualize your future, Dave?
I'm going to have 30 years of borrowed time. It's the only way to look at it. No, I mean, seriously, that's the way I look at it. I love waking up and irritating my wife, and she ain't getting off that easy. And she's probably watching right now, totally agreeing I irritate her every day I wake up.
What is your message to Speaker Johnson today?
Talk to me. And I don't care how, just talk to me. I pray to God somebody can help connect the dots, and I can sit there and say, sir, be a hero to a few folks, and let's have a conversation.
Do you have any thoughts about the administration's intention to restart nuclear testing?
Yeah, I got some ideas there. Yeah, don't do it. What are we going to learn? We blew up, the DOE says like 928 bombs. I can prove to you it was more than that. But what are we going to learn from one more test? There's not a damn thing. We got simulators, we got all kinds of stuff. Nevada's been nuked enough. Leave it alone. The Marshall Islands been nuked enough. God willing, we're going to get to a point in the world where those aren't a weapon that we use to threaten one another with. I get why we have them, 100%. It'd be great to get to a world that didn't need them anymore.
Is there any national security justification for why you and your fellow vets who served out there on the range remain data masked?
No, not in my opinion. I mean, there's things we'll all take to our grave. All of us that serve, there's things that we're just not going to talk about. But it's not about what we did. It's about where we did it, about what happened before we ever got there. And I don't think there's a mystery anywhere that the U.S. government blew up a bunch of nukes somewhere. The mystery is that there was people that actually worked there, sleep there. Our air was contaminated, soil was contaminated, water was contaminated. And they knew it.
When you think about future generations, when you think about your kids, your grandkids, what do you want them to understand about this fight that you're undertaking right now?
You know, what country, I'm a huge patriot. I might be fighting them on something right now, but in what country can nobody from somewhere knock on the door and say, you piss me off, and I'm going to do something about it, and I don't end up in the gulag somewhere? You know, that you don't end up missing somehow. There's a lot of countries in the world you can't do that. And in this one, I can bitch like crazy and say they screwed up and, you know, pound my fist or whatever, and I go home at night and I sleep in a safe home, and you can't do that. My wife's born in Havana, Cuba. They left for a reason. I want them to know. You can wake up. You can make a difference. And if I'm not proof that anybody can do that, can't do that, I mean, anybody can do it. Especially if you know Natasha.
You've taken many trips here to DC fighting this fight now over the last 3 years so far. Tell me about the difference in reception that you've received. Tell me about what you're experiencing now.
So when I started coming, it was, who the hell are you and what do you want? And who's the lowest staffer on the totem pole that's going to sit with this guy for 5 minutes? And now it's, well, sir, it's wonderful to see you again, Congressman Takano. I'm just going to say it, he's one of the greatest advocates that my group has on Capitol Hill. So thank you, sir. But it's now, our message is resonating, and people are starting to understand who we are. And people truly are listening. And that's incredible. So we've gone a long way from who the hell are you to welcome, and it's beautiful.
Yeah.
It's really beautiful.
If you could say one thing to the families who have lost someone on the memorial list, what would that be?
God, I say a lot to them. All of this is for those that we've lost and those that follow us. Not only our kids, the service members, there's still people working at these spots, guys. The government still knows what they're doing. That's why they're pissed off I'm talking about it. But they will be remembered. They will be remembered.
I appreciate that, Dave. I want to ask, is there a piece of healing at all in coming forward in this way, in this room of people that we're in today, in the millions of people who have seen the piece so far? We have Congressman Takano, who we're about to speak to in a minute as well, who's been an early champion, to come forward and to finally be believed.
Yeah, it's my biggest worry. Everybody understands that when you work out in this place in the Nevada desert, there is all kinds of rumors, right? There's little green people and all these different things. And so nobody believes you. And the last thing I ever wanted to be was another conspiracy theory. And we're way past that now. And people get it. And I am eternally thankful that people are recognizing what our fight's about.
What is the fight about? What do you want every American to know about this story?
What their government is capable of, number one. And in the end, everyone has the power to fix it. And people don't think so. Our government right now is all screwed up. We all get it, and they're going to work it out, and we know that'll happen too. But if you don't like it, you can literally step up and say, I'm going to fix it. You can be one of 300 and whatever million people. You can just be one and make a difference.
What does fixing it look like? What does justice look like for you and your fellow vets?
That my wife will get the benefits that she's entitled to. So now y'all know why I get emotional. This is a pretty tough one. But thank you. Thank you. Thanks for giving me 15 minutes of your time and listening. This is how we win.
Appreciate you so much, Dave. Is there a final message that you want to leave us with today?
I'm going to say this, and this is a little bit off color, not off color, but kind of off topic. Everybody that took an oath took it to a document, right? Our oath didn't go to a party or a president or some other person. We took an oath to a document. And that's one of the things I truly hope everybody remembers. And those of us that are veterans, we know that. We need to remind others that this whole thing is about a document. And that document is why I'm here.
You're going to be going across the street to the White House in just a moment.
I'll be taking some selfies.
I am very excited to see those. I hope you get to meet with the president. If you do, what will you tell him?
It's just a signature, sir. That's all it is. It's just a signature. It's a pick up the phone and call the Speaker of the House and say, just make this done. That's all it is. 30 seconds. And I'll get out of Congressman Takano's hair. He has it.
Yeah.
So thank you, and thank you, and thank you.
Can't thank you enough. Dave Creed, everyone, thank you.
You're awesome.
I appreciate you so much. For everyone watching the stream, that was a resounding standing ovation for Dave Creed there, and very well deserved. Thank you again, Dave.
To close out our summit, please welcome Congressman Mark Takano, a Democrat from California and ranking member of the House Veterans Affairs Committee.
Hi, Natasha.
Representative Takano, so good to see you. Thank you for being here.
Good, thank you.
All right. Dave Creed is a hard act to follow.
Oh, well, Dave Creed is an amazing, amazing human being, amazing patriot, and amazing advocate.
It's entirely true. I couldn't agree more. And you were one of the early supporters. I know you saw the piece when it aired in February.
Yeah.
You immediately invited him to not one, but two congressional roundtables.
Yes.
You wanted to amplify his voice in a big way. Tell me again, what was your reaction to seeing the Area 51 piece and to learn what has happened to these veterans?
It made me angry.
Yeah. I believe your words were pissed off at the beginning.
Well, yes, I was pissed. I was pissed off. I was angry, outraged.
Yeah.
I just hate seeing veterans having to fight their own government to get what is owed to them, what is due to them, and this craziness of the DoD. In the case, I think it's the Air Force, not acknowledging that they even existed.
Right.
But we actually have a law that was signed by President Clinton, which acknowledged the exposure, the environmental hazards to DoD employees. So civilian employees have had some recourse, some compensation. I don't know how complete it was and how adequate it was, but nothing, crickets for our service members who were in harm's way.
How crazy is that? If I can speak very bluntly with you, how crazy is that DoD workers and others?
You know, it's catch-22 crazy. It's the theater of the absurd. It's you know, you're in some just bizarre twilight zone.
Yeah.
And it must be maddening. It was maddening for people like Dave Creed. It is maddening for the men who serve there, and to watch your brothers in arms dying of these cancers and these diseases that follow from exposure to radiation. To just run into this brick wall and have no one listen, and to think that you're the crazy one. But it's really, what's crazy is the system. It's crazy. What's crazy is the governmental response.
Yeah, and I think there's something particularly maddening about the response of essentially you did not exist, data masked. You were never out there on the range. You were never out there in the desert.
Yeah, it is the height of just bureaucratic tomfoolery, and it has real human consequences. And so I am at pains. I thought that we got everything. So I'm the principal author of the Honoring Our Pact Act, which was the largest expansion of veterans benefits in a generation, maybe in history. And you know, it was my intent to not only address the millions of veterans that were exposed to toxic burn pits in Iraq and Afghanistan. It was clear to me that the veteran service organizations and this generation of veterans from the post 9/11 era had amassed some political currency with their partnership with Jon Stewart and the media they were generating, sympathy they were getting from the public. I said, they're creating this wave, and we're going to be successful, but I want to make sure that we get as many cohort of toxic exposed veterans included. And so there was definitely unfinished business from the Vietnam War era, Agent Orange exposures, illnesses that were connected to those exposures. Watak Atoll in the Pacific is a toxic exposure to radiation, which is similar to the radiation exposures in the Nevada test sites. We had a Thule radiation exposure to some of our Air Force folks in Thule, Greenland, I think. So look, there was a little, so what's my point? We had smaller cohorts of these toxic exposed veterans who didn't have the political currency of all those who were sent to Iraq and Afghanistan. I said, let's make sure we get as many of these folks in the bill. And it just stabs me in the side when I see, we didn't get Dave Crete and the Area 51 vets.
Yeah.
And there's others that I know out there. And there's unfinished business with regard to toxic exposure and environmental exposure. And so the roundtables that we've held in the past few months, I think have been laying the groundwork. Dave Crete was at one of them, but I've had military people that represent military families who've been on domestic bases here.
Yeah.
And we know we have a situation on Hawaii. We had a situation in San Bernardino County. And one of the things that did get included at the last minute, Speaker Emerita Pelosi just announced her retirement today. And we had this all wrapped up in a bow, the PACT Act that was, and then she calls me into her office and she says, Mark, I want to tell you about Camp Lejeune. All the families and service members that were exposed to the toxics at Camp Lejeune since the 50s. Tremendous injustice. Reverend Barber has been in my ear about this. I wonder if you might include this in the PACT Act. Well, Speaker has a way of framing things in a question when she's really telling you what she wants you to do. And I've said, I could read, not only in the room, but read Madam Speaker. And I said, of course, Nancy, I'll definitely put this into the bill. so Camp Lejeune was made in. So anyway, my point is the PACT Act, I had hoped for it to be comprehensive, but it was never meant to be the end. And so we're finding that there's the basis for a PACT Act 2.0. And there is a presumptive process that we set up that the Secretary Collins has quite a bit of discretion on. And so it's my belief that it's not just the President, but Secretary Collins can move a presumptive for these Area 51 veterans.
What is your message for Secretary Collins?
Secretary Collins, if you're listening, use your authority. Use your authority. Move Area 51 faster. Representative Amadai and Representative Lee have a bill which would recognize Area 51 exposures as a presumptive to radiation. We should do both at the same time, but I believe this can move much faster with the provisions we put into the PACT Act to recognize new presumptives.
Yeah, and I want to ask you just one more very quick question on this before we broaden the scope, because you've been championing this for such a long time now. What is your personal commitment to Dave Crete and the other Area 51 veterans?
Well, my personal commitment is to do whatever I can, whether it's cajoling the Secretary to move this along, whether it's moving that legislation, the Amidai, Susie Lee legislation. But I can't do that without the chairman, Chairman Bost. So my message to Chairman Mike Bost is, Mike, schedule a hearing. Give these patriots their due moment before a committee, and let's get this heard. Because I think once both sides hear this, it's already a bipartisan bill. We got Amidai and Lee on this. I think there will be enough political momentum to move this through.
Yeah, you've said you believe that this is deserving of a full hearing by the Veterans Affairs Committee. Yeah. You've called for this before. Yes. Any response from the chairman? No. Well, no action. I mean, he's responded to me in private and everything, but sometimes I think my colleagues on the side, they just run into brick walls over pay-fors and costs. It does cost, but we have this crazy thing where veterans, we've always got to have a CUTGO and POGO. People don't understand this, but we don't pay for veterans benefits or health care out of the defense budget. It's a domestic priority. And it runs into competition with everything else that's domestic. And I think we need to change our attitude. Veterans are about 1% to 2% of our population. We need to make the commitment that we're going to do everything we can to keep our promise to take care of them. And in this case, money should not be the object. It's our promise and our commitment to our veterans. That's what's at stake here. I want to ask more about that. You mentioned bipartisanship. As ranking member of the House Veterans Affairs Committee, how would you describe your relationship with your Republican counterparts and the White House? Where is the bipartisan common ground? Well, veterans issues are often bipartisan. It's my opinion that when my party controlled both the House and the Senate and the presidency, that's when we really moved very significant legislation forward. I moved the PACT Act through the House with something like 34 Republican votes. Nancy later whispered in my ear, she says, I don't understand why they all aren't voting for this. So John Tester, when he got the PACT Act in the Senate, he got, I think, 84 votes. There was some drama. There was a mistake. I won't get into all of that, but let me just say that on final passage to the House, I had to pass it twice. Maybe if actually we had to go 3 times. We got a huge number of Republican votes, but I'll tell you, the current speaker was among those that voted against it. What do you think the justification would be to vote against it? Look, to get into their heads, this bill was expensive. It was estimated by the CBO to be like $700 billion. It was like $250 billion short of $1 trillion. It was expensive, and we called it, part of the title was the cost of war, Toxic Exposure Act. And as my colleague, Dr. Ruiz, Raul Ruiz, he would always say something to the effect that, look, in the heat of battle, you need the body armor, and we'd have no problems in Congress funding whatever the early stories, remember the Iraq War, the early stories of like inadequate body armor, the plates weren't on the Humvees. But toxic exposed conditions or the diseases show up 5, 10, 15 years later. And it doesn't quite have the same emotional urgency as like, oh, we got to get them body armor. But we've got to consider that when a cancer shows up 10 years later because of exposure to the burn pits, that's also urgent. And it's the cost of war. And we need to calculate that in, and we can't show reluctance to take care of the veteran when that happens, right? So I'm going to say, to answer your question, it comes down to cost. They don't want to pay for it. They don't. It's like it comes down to that, and
I'm in the camp of we got to pay for it. And I got Republican colleagues who believe that too. But we run into an ideology that is too rigid.
I hear that. And it's this has been one of the major pushes and passions of your life, as well as other veterans issues. I want to open the conversation to some of those. Veteran homelessness remains a crisis in your state of California and across the nation. What new approaches or policies are you pushing for?
Well, I'm looking to make sure we get more HUD vouchers, more supportive services. I'm dismayed that the current administration under Secretary Collins is paring back. They're paring back housing first. They're paring back things that we know that work.
What do you think the effect of that will be?
It's going to be more homeless people on the street, more homeless veterans on the street. There was a tremendous decrease in veteran homelessness under the Biden administration in the midst of a pandemic. Why? We simply doubled or tripled the per diem reimbursements that homeless organizations could get by putting veterans into shelters and putting them into hotels. It wasn't rocket science. That increase expired with the pandemic emergency expiration dates. We had sought to make those per diem increases permanent. Again, running into cost. The majority did agree with us partially and said, well, we'll do it for 1 or 2 years. But politics has made it such that the Elizabeth Dole Act, where the Home Act is included on the homelessness, has been delayed. It's just not been implemented. They're slow walking the implementation at the administration.
I want to talk about the topic of veteran suicide as well. One of our esteemed panelists earlier asked the room, and I just want to do that one more time so that you can see the response as well. Show of hands, how many among us have been personally affected by veteran suicide?
Yeah.
That's nearly every hand.
Well, I could raise my hand too. At 10 years old, I came home from school around this time of year, maybe a little bit earlier in the time of year, but I was 10 years old, and I'd learned that that my uncle, who had served a tour in Vietnam, had taken his life. So very young. It was one of the things that I think impelled me to join and become a member of this committee, that I remember that experience. So I can tell you that I declared it a priority when I became the chairman. It was like 21 veterans were dying a day. That number kind of goes, it fluctuates, but it's stubbornly too high. One of the innovations that I and my team came up with is called the Compact Act. And the Compact Act was signed into law by President Trump. It became implemented by President Biden. And what did it do? It said that every veteran in the country, regardless of their eligibility for VA, regardless of whether you're eligible for VA healthcare, you can get emergency mental health care and for free. You don't have to worry about paying the bill. We can get you into inpatient or outpatient, and you can access it through the Veterans Hotline or an emergency room. And Dennis McDonough told me in the first year, the first 6 months, that I think he said about 40 or 50,000 veterans used the Compact Act, and he was floored. So that many veterans across our country had utilized the Compact Act. The second thing that I would like to see happen is something called eVest. What does eVest do? eVest automatically enrolls every service member into VA healthcare as they're separating. Right now, you have to enroll, which can be a problem. Why will this impact a veteran's the suicide rate? In my belief, we know that suicide rates are much, much lower for those veterans that are connected to VA services, and there shouldn't be any lapse. And that kind of ties into the whole transition. And there is bipartisan concern and work on improving the transition of service members into civilian life. We need to improve that, reduce the stressors that lead to suicidal ideations and moments.
You really have your finger on the pulse of veterans issues in this country and challenges behind the scenes in making progress. In this moment, what is keeping you up at night? What feels most urgent and what is most frustrating to you?
Well, I worry about moving into winter and not having homelessness programs fully on firing on all cylinders. I worry about this moment where nutrition programs like SNAP, that 1.2 million veterans depend on SNAP.
How does this affect our veterans? Tell me more about that.
Well, people don't realize that not every veteran gets their health care through the VA. And if you think about it, who joins our military are often folks from lower income backgrounds. And they don't transition out into necessarily becoming the highest paid workers in our country. So we have a lot of veterans that are low income. They may live in rural areas far away from VA, so they depend on access to Medicaid. I tried to get an exemption for veterans from the work requirements under what I call the big ugly bill, the big ugly law. We're going to have 1.6 veterans facing losing their Medicaid, 1.2 million veterans losing SNAP. 600,000 veterans across the country depend on the enhanced premium tax credits to buy health policies under the Affordable Care Act. So veterans rely on the social safety net that all Americans rely on. And so when we pare that back, we're also hurting veterans. But the thing that really also, this is a more abstract thing, but I've just seen an explosion in community care costs at the VA, meaning private healthcare. And I'm really worried about this administration starving the in-house direct care that VA provides and the tremendous partnership that these medical centers across the country have with universities. They play a huge role in training our medical doctors. You talk to most doctors, they'll tell you they train partly at the VA. So some of the cuts that I see happening and some of the rigid privatization philosophy, I worry that irreparable damage will be done to VA healthcare for our veterans.
I hear it. There's also a particularly interesting issue that you've championed, your Veterans Service Recognition Act, that takes on the issue of non-citizen veterans who served honorably but were deported or never received the citizenship that they were promised. What needs to happen to make sure that their service is recognized, that the promise to them is kept?
Well, so a lot of people don't even, when you talk about deported veterans, they go, that's an oxymoron.
Yeah, set the stage for us. What are we talking about here?
So we're talking about veterans so there's a very small, tiny, minuscule number that were dreamers that joined the military. To join the military, you need to be a legal permanent resident. So you were legally in this country. But a legally permanent resident joins the military.
So this is someone, say, on a green card.
On a green card, that's what it is, a green card. An LPR is a green card holder. They're here legally. The recruiter tells them, you can get your citizenship, but that may not be the biggest motivator for that. Sure. They want to just serve the country. It's not like the military guides you into what you need to do with citizenship. And when you take the oath to join the Army, many people might mistake that as I'm a citizen now. But the military has not really taken any responsibility for green card holders once they enter in. And the law says that in a time of conflict, you have a right to become a citizen on a fast track. What happens is that these service members leave the military. Some of them have been in combat. Some of them get into trouble. Some of them self-medicate. They get into a bar fight or other trouble. That experience with the justice system puts them on track to being up for deportation. And we're seeing some service members that there's one kid from Korea had exactly what I just talked about. That got used by this administration in this moment to have him self-deport to South Korea. There are other people, so they do get into trouble with the law. But ICE does not identify on a routine basis. Their own regulations say that you have to identify a veteran status of somebody who's going into deportation proceedings. That does not happen. Congressman Vargas and I wrote a letter to the GAO to figure out how many deported veterans there are, and they said, we don't know, because ICE doesn't keep records on all of this. So I have this bill called the Veteran Service Recognition Act. What does it do? One, it says, military, have a process to make sure that the non-citizen veterans that you recruit have an opportunity to become citizens while they're in the military. That will help protect them if they do get into any trouble when they leave the military. Because as a citizen, you're not going to be up for deportation for just merely an infraction of the law. The second part is we say in deportation proceedings, somebody who has committed a crime, let's weigh their service record into the proceedings. Right now, that's not part of, they're sort of shoved out. They're still entitled to their benefits, even if they're outside the country. We need to have VA have a way to make sure that those veterans are getting those benefits.
Yeah, absolutely. We're here to spotlight veterans' voices today.
Sure.
I'm curious, what do you hear most often from veterans that you speak with?
I hear sometimes complaints about the care they're giving. So I try to get them connected to casework. I have a team of caseworkers. Often I hear great things about VA medical aid. They say, don't you let them mess it up. I go to the VA and I can get everything done in one place. I don't have to go to the lab over here, and they can get their medications at a much reduced price. So I often hear great things about it. Sometimes the veteran might know that I was connected with the PACT Act, and they'll tell me how it's changed their life, and they'll thank me. And I'll really feel it because I know how it's changed their life. So it's one of the, I think I have one of the most high job satisfaction with my work. A lot of frustration in that I would like to see Dave Crete taken care of more quickly.
Yeah.
That's where the frustration comes in. But knowing that 3.5 million veterans are getting relief under the PACT Act, that's a huge feeling of accomplishment.
When you think about the next generation of veterans who will be returning from service, what do you want to see done differently for them that we were not able to do for previous generations?
Well, I would love to see as much attention paid to exiting the military as there is to the training that they get as they come in. So there's basic training, and you can see all sorts of movies about what that's like, how they prepare our veterans for combat. But many of these veterans do come from very low-income homes. They come from a variety of different economic situations. As an 18-year-old kid, you go through, say you're in the Marines, you do this sort of 5-year stint. How much has the military has maybe given you discipline, you show up on time, but it may not have really given you the skills to compete in the marketplace, to get through an education, to get through training. It's this back end of military service. So there's something called Skills Bridge, which the last 180 days of service you can go intern, you can do a workforce development program, you can go shadow or intern someplace. I would like to see that become universal. That the command, so you do have to get permission from your commander to participate in all this.
It seems like a no-brainer. This seems like an auto-enroll, get everyone to do this, give them the bridge.
It does seem like that. It will take more money because the military will have to calculate the increased personnel sort of demands, because you're going to have to really plan for every single person to sort of exit prepared. But I think we'll pay a lower unemployment for some of the veterans. But we really need to think of the military as, for those shorter stints,
Yeah.
which I think are the higher risk. For this next generation, I would really emphasize thinking through that whole life cycle, and especially the most vulnerable veterans, which are those shorter term, not the lifers, not the 20-year career people.
What is giving you hope right now? Things can feel really dire sometimes. What is giving you hope right now in Congress, in the country, or in the veterans community that real lasting change is possible?
Well, I'll go back to I see what can be done when advocacy groups align. I think the PACT Act is a good example of that. That's a good reference point. I'm already planning like a PACT Act 2.0. So at once, there's two things I'm doing right now, which is to defend what we got. I am scared right now that already this secretary has been the first to pare back PACT Act benefits.
How devastating is that to you personally, to know how hard won this was, and the people behind it? Who
I'm
will
not
really be
devastated
affected?
yet, but I'm it's a little step that I'm watching carefully, and believe you me, I'm working with the advocates to defend every inch of territory that we've won. But the second time, on the other hand, I know that monumental things can be done, that great things can be done, and that's what gives me hope, is that I know that when we're aligned on a purpose, when you have VSOs and the public connected, that we can do great things. And we've made some progress. We've made a huge amount of progress for our veterans, and there's always more to go. And in the words of a great American, Martin Luther King, he just says two words: press on.
Press on.
Press on.
Press on. And I think we're going to leave it there. I can't think of a better closing. Congressman Takano, thank you so much.
Thank you, my friend.
Thank you. I appreciate you all so much. And again, my name is Natasha Zubes. What a joy to be with all of you today. And Mike Vaquera, I know, shares my sentiments to all of our esteemed panelists today. I know Dave Crete will be heading over to the White House in just a moment, so if we can send him all of our good wishes and all of our support. If you missed any portion, for anyone who's watching the stream, you can see this on thehill.com. And again, thank you all so much. I really appreciate your time and attention today. Thank you.